Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
Getting ready to smoke chickens.
Well, all right. That's not the answer I expected, but it is a Sunday morning.
No, I'm doing great. I feel great. It's early Sunday morning. The sun is out. Spring is in the air. It's going to be a beautiful day. And I invited, Lori and I invited one of our neighbors down the road, Doris, to come over. Doris brings me goose eggs. Doris has geese, ducks, and cows, and horses, and an ostrich. No, what is it? What's a bird that looks like an ostrich, but it's not? An emu. She's got an emu. She's got a giant pig. Pig is the size of a Kia. It's huge. All it does is lay in the freaking mud all day long. But Doris, she's from Germany. She used to be a veterinarian. She picks up every stray animal, every stray cat, dog, horse, donkey. She actually raises and trains wild Mustangs. This woman is 70 some odd years old, maybe 70, 74, lives by herself on a ranch. She breaks, meaning tames to a degree, and trains wild Mustangs. Did you know that? There are wild Mustangs, you can adopt them and then train them, and they turn into absolutely fantastic mountain horses.
Not a lot of that happening in downtown Huntsville. Can't say that I've seen anybody break a wild Mustang, but
we just went off into the weeds right off the top.
Your ADD is kicking in real early this morning, and we're excited that we're here with you this morning on 83 Weeks. Thank you guys for checking us out at 83weeks.com. We were out of sorts and out of our routine last week, and we actually wound up going live Tuesday evening. And boy, there was a lot to talk about. And as luck would have it, we're recording this Sunday morning, just hours ahead of AEW Dynasty in St. Louis. Over the weekend, they announced that Chris Jericho and Hook are going to wrestle for the FTW title, but the rest of the card we pretty much had mapped out. I do want to talk a little bit about AEW at the end of today's show. Of course, there is going to be some speculation on my part, maybe even some spoilers. So if you're watching with us live here this morning from adfreeshows.com and you don't want to potentially have the pay-per-view spoiled tonight, we'll give you a heads up and you can tag out. Of course, I'm talking to our live studio audience who joins us early and ad free. They get to be a part of what we're doing and everything we're doing over at adfreeshows.com, including great bonus content from every single host each and every month. I'm having a blast over there. I think you will too. We've got a very special interview lined up later this week. One I've been looking forward to for a long time. That's going to be coming to adfreeshows.com sooner rather than later. But before we talk about our nostalgia topic and then close the show with a little AEW chatter, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about WWE, Eric, because we're seeing now Solo Sikoa step up as the new leader, if you will, of the Bloodline. And he's introduced formally his MFT. Made my wife chuckle because those are her initials now. Tama Tonga. And boy, they had a bloody scene with a car wreck behind the show on SmackDown. We debuted some brand new tag team titles. We even had an interview done over in London that was then dropped into the show from Cody Rhodes, who was wrestling in front of the largest house show in WWE history. It was a fun SmackDown. It was a well done show. And meanwhile, that's just one of the crews. The other crew is setting records across the pond. There's a lot to talk about in WWE land this week, Eric.
A lot of energy, a lot of success, a lot of records being broken on a regular basis. Critically acclaimed, really, pay-per-view. Amazing storytelling, new characters. This Tama Tonga character, what a impressive young man he is.
By the way, you keep saying young, and you're getting roasted online. He's like 41. But I appreciate you leaning into it.
I'm 69.
He's
my son's age. He's my son's age. My son just turned 40 yesterday. He's a kid in my eyes. He will always be a kid in my eyes. The hell are you people getting upset about nothing for? Have you nothing better to do?
My favorite is when people were like, "Oh, he's an old man." Not like my favorite LA Knight. They were born the same year, guys. 41 is no longer old in the wrestling business.
Well, the heat I got, of course, it's not old. If you look at the rosters in WWE or look at the roster in AEW, 40, you're kind of knocking on the sweet spot store. You're getting into your prime in 40. Because you've gone through your 20s learning that you don't want to do all the stupid shit you thought was cool when you were 12. And then you start figuring it out. Well, some people do. And if you're lucky enough to get into a situation where you're working with people who understand the storytelling components of the business, understand how to pace a match, understand how to manipulate the audience to get the reaction that you want to get when you want to get it, as opposed to hoping and praying for "this is awesome" chance. If you're one of those lucky individuals on the independent scene and you happen to cross paths with a veteran that can teach you some of those things, or maybe you just learn by observing. Oh my God, imagine that. You just learn by watching people, I don't know, like maybe Randy Orton, for example, who is an artist. He's an artist. He's not a professional wrestler. He passed professional wrestler a long, long time ago. He's an artist. He tells a story with every square inch of his body, every facial twitch adds an element of interest to his story. Perhaps you're one of those lucky enough independent wrestlers to observe a guy like Randy Orton, and then you take your skill sets out of the road, you grow and you become better. And that doesn't usually happen unless you're a freak of fucking nature. It doesn't happen until you're probably in your late 30s. The light bulb goes off. You finally figure it out. Well, some do. And they go on to become huge stars. So, yeah, 40s, whatever. But the reason I'm getting all the heat I'm getting is because I was unfamiliar with Tama Tonga. Guess what? I don't sit around and watch wrestling 8 hours a week. I really don't. I have another life. I enjoy watching wrestling. I drop in when I hear about something that I'm interested in, particularly that I think we might talk about here in 83 weeks. Yes, hold on a second.
You wouldn't be able to watch him anyway, Eric. He's a New Japan wrestler. You wouldn't be, even if you watched 8 hours of wrestling a week, you wouldn't have seen him. He's a New Japan wrestler. So unless you were keeping up with New Japan,
even know that. What the fuck? No. That's how out of touch I am.
One of the OG members of the Bullet Club.
Impressive young man.
Yeah, 41. When you're damn near 70, still a young man.
I honestly, I have 2 pairs of jeans that are almost that old.
That's tremendous. Well, what's not old is the matchup. AJ Styles versus Cody Rhodes. That is going to headline Backlash in France, as Cody said in his promo. 2 Georgia boys battling it out in the middle of France. Man, it's pretty fun to think about how long AJ Styles has been at this. In the early days, the Asylum Nashville days of TNA, he defended the NWA World Championship against Dusty Rhodes. And now all these years later, 20 years later, almost, we're talking about him wrestling Cody for the WWE title. What a career AJ has had. And I know he's probably in the twilight now. He's made it clear that he's not planning to wrestle forever. He's at least thinking about retirement. He can see it from where he is in his career. I don't think he's gotten his just due in the company, because you want to talk about a guy who was the torchbearer for TNA, and then he enjoyed so much success with New Japan. But even under the Vince McMahon WWE, he had a hell of a run.
He did. And I do believe that, with a trivia, that AJ got his start in WCW.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. The very end. That's right.
Yeah. Very end of WCW. And he may have been part of the power plant. I don't think so. I don't think that's where he was trained primarily, but perhaps AJ Styles got his start in WCW. On another related trivia note, this may be the first time in history. I don't know. I have to check this out. Got a bunch of enlightened muckerfuthers out there listening to the show that'll probably do the research, correct us before the end of the show, or correct me if indeed I'm wrong, but this may be the first time in history two former Georgia high school state wrestling champions meet.
Yeah.
I don't know. Check it out.
Interesting idea.
If it's true, May 4th is a date that will go down in the history books. Dave Meltzer will be writing about it. True history. All kidding aside, and I'm not kidding, that is true, from what I can recall. Two great guys. I mean, really, really forget about what they've accomplished in professional wrestling and entertainment. Just forget about all that. If they never stepped foot in a wrestling ring, these are two of the nicest human beings I've ever had the pleasure to meet.
Agree.
These are really, really good human beings. Now, add to the fact that they're both phenomenal in the ring. They're phenomenal characters, know how to make you believe and keep you excited at the same time. Can't wait. It's going to be fun.
I can't wait either. I do think it's going to be a great show. I'm a huge AJ Styles fan. I think he has been one of the best wrestlers in the world for the last 20 years. I mean, I really mean that. And the idea that he's getting to be the headline in the title match in the first ever PLE from France is a big deal. And it's a big deal that he's the first challenger for Cody in his new Renaissance era, whatever we're calling this Triple H era. That being said, I have seen some criticism online from people who felt like, maybe what we really needed was Cody to have a big, mean, nasty heel lined up right after WrestleMania. And instead we had a match to determine who would get that opportunity between LA Knight and AJ Styles. And I think I said recently on one of our podcasts, probably got to be AJ because he's the heel in that scenario. I don't think they'd want to split the audience with Cody and LA Knight, babyface versus babyface just yet. But do you think if you had your hands on the steering wheel after we had Cody slay the dragon of the bloodline after all these chances and all this time, would you have immediately put him into another scenario where it looked like he was at a disadvantage, a big, mean, nasty heel? Or do you like, hey, let's go out and put on the best match we can with AJ?
I like a little bit of both, and that sounds like a cop-out. It is. But let me put it this way. I would not have thrust him immediately into a precarious situation with a big, nasty heel with no real story. Now, if that's what I wanted to get to, I take my time to get there. I learned the hard way. I learned by mistakes. I learned by observing others' success and others' mistakes. And story matters overall. And I think the formula, and that's what it would be, typically wrestling was, until recently, as television has become more and more important financially to a company, I think the approach to television has changed a lot. Well, in some places. You know what I mean? Storytelling, character development are obviously much more important in WWE, perhaps than they've been in a long time. At least from my observation, the depth of story and structure and discipline and the nuances in the story, the little things, the little details in a story, which is what really makes it strong. I'm seeing a lot of that. And I say all that to say, I forgot what we were talking about.
We're talking about big, mean, nasty heel or AJ.
Oh, yeah. So before the emphasis on television, I think that we're seeing today, wrestling has always been, okay, let's shoot an angle. Then you're going to do a promo. Then I'm going to do a promo. Then next week, you're going to do a promo. I'm going to do a promo, but we're going to have a pull apart. And then the next week after that, you're going to do a promo in the ring, and I'm going to sneak into the ring, or I'll come up from underneath the ring. I'm going to hit you with a fucking chair. I'm going to sabotage. I'm going to get my heat. And then you're going to barely make it up to your feet, and we're going to go off the air, and then we're going to have a pay-per-view match. That's not storytelling. That's a formula. It's creating a series of events that take place that justify the match you want to have. That's basically AEW, nutshell. Whereas you've got WWE, who is taking more time and they're building more slowly. They're not rushing into the character or rushing into story. They're letting them simmer and cook appropriately. So I think because of that and the commitment that I've seen over the last at least year to detail and nuance and discipline and story, I think it's a smart move not to jump into the big nasty heel quite yet. Let's first of all, Cody's been in our face now for a long time. It's been Cody. Yeah, there's Rock in there. There's other people involved in that story. But all of that story was designed to get us to where we are right this moment. So there was obviously so much emphasis on Cody. Let's let that carrot, let the people start to want it again. They got it. We just gave it to them. Think of it like going to a restaurant. You've had this great anticipation, been reading about this restaurant. Your friends tell you about it. You saw it on the freaking food channel. Now you really can't wait to go. And you go and you actually starve yourself a little bit before you go to the restaurant because you want that anticipation. You want the excitement. You want to look forward to that meal. And finally you begin to eat and you eat and you eat and you eat and you're starting to get full and you go, oh my God, I still have dessert. Oh, I got to slow down. And then they bring you dessert. Of course, the dessert looks like something right off the cover of a magazine. And even though you committed to not eating dessert before you went to the restaurant, you end up going face first into a fucking cheesecake that leaves you in a coma. And as you come out of that coma, the waitress says, would you like a cup of coffee? So you take that sip of coffee and you go, wow, this is really good. Can't wait to come back. But instead they bring you more food. Well, you're tired of the food. You've had as much. You loved it. You can't wait to come back. But God, give me a break. That's what they need to do with Cody. Give it a little rest, and everybody else can rise to the surface, get a little more TV time, a little more attention, build your stars. Got to keep going. Don't put it all on Cody right now. Just let them get hungry, and then let them mucker feathers eat all the cake they want. That was fun.
Well, I don't know if you should eat all the cake you want. And maybe you'll learn a little more about whether you should or shouldn't. If you try Signos, they are proud to sponsor our program, and we are proud to have them sponsor our program. You know, we vet all of our sponsors here on the show, which means they send us something to try before we commit. And when my wife opened this box, she said, honey, this is a real medical device. This is the real deal. You got to talk about this. And what she's talking about is a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM. And I have to admit, I'd never even heard of that until we found out about Signos. And the reason I think this is important is the CDC estimates there's approximately 96 million American adults, which is more than 1 in 3, who have pre-diabetes. And of those with pre-diabetes, more than 80% don't even know they have it. Now, why does this matter? Well, foods that are high in carbohydrates raise your blood sugar more than other foods. And during digestion, the pancreas produces insulin, which then binds the sugar in the blood and takes it into cells as a source of energy. But buddy, if you have pre-diabetes, what happens is the sugar begins to build up in the bloodstream rather than fueling the cells. And this is when insulin resistance occurs. It's believed to be the number one cause of pre-diabetes. Now, a healthy weight allows insulin to work more efficiently and can help keep those blood sugars within a healthy, normal range. And a healthy diet and regular exercise are the best way to help bring your blood sugar levels back into a healthy range. But that's where Signos comes in. Think of it as like a hot tag for you on your journey here. They help you short circuit this cycle by using data directly from your body. So you're not going to have to guess. You're not going to have to wonder. You will have the information. Before you make any major decision in your life, you need the information. You've all heard that, right? We want to make an informed decision. Well, it turns out with Signos, you can literally see which foods will cause your blood sugar to spike above a reasonable level. And you'll even get a real-time alert to do a bit of exercise to bring them back down. Now, I don't mean to suggest you're going to be sitting at your desk at the office and it's going to say, hey man, you got to run a marathon right now. That's not it. We're saying, hey, what about a short walk with the dog right fast? That'll get you in range. You just want to keep your body working at its optimal level. And the way to do that is with the data from Signos. And we talked about making an informed decision. Well, let me just smarten you up on this. On average, it's been said people make about 227 different food choices a day. Think about that. You're going to learn the difference between stress eating and physical hunger. You're going to be able to better manage your energy throughout the day. You're going to sleep better at night. But more importantly, with the data, man, you're going to take control of your health and your weight and put your hands on the steering wheel there. Signos' unique to you program for weight loss is backed by a field of scientific research and scientists, and they all point to stable glucose as a real key part of overall health. And I have to admit, I was totally ignorant to this. I had not had any experience with it. I didn't know, hey, that glass of wine makes a big difference at dinner. I didn't know that. That never even crossed my mind. And as Eric said, hey, an apple, well, that's going to spike you too. There's some glucose in there. There's some natural sugar in there. And most of us listening to this, man, we'd have thought, well, we went with an apple, not a candy bar. How could that be? Well, Signos has removed the guesswork of weight loss. They're providing us with the tools and knowledge we need to develop healthier habits. It combines your real-time glucose data from the CGM with an AI-driven app to deliver you real-time glucose insights for optimal health and weight management. And right now, Signos has an offer exclusively for our 83 Weeks listeners. Go right now to Signos.com. That's Signos.com. You'll get up to 20% off select plans when you use our code 83 Weeks today. That's Signos.com and use the code 83 Weeks and you'll get up to 20% off select plans for you today. That's Signos.com, Signos.com, and use our promo code 83 Weeks.
You know what, Conrad? I want to point something out on Signos because I really, really, really do believe in this product. I'm fortunate. I don't have prediabetes or any other conditions. I'm not on any medications whatsoever. I'm, knock on wood, damn healthy. But one of the reasons I think I'm pretty damn healthy, well, it's mostly because of my wife and her discipline rubbed off on me eventually. But it's because as kind of a hobby, Lori takes it very seriously, but as almost a hobby for me, I'm into nutrition and kind of maximize, I hate to say the word hack, but hacking my metabolism. And, I want to live longer. I want to be more active. I want to stay as physically active as I can for as long as I can. I have a grandson that I want to, take hunting and fishing and horseback riding in the mountains in another 10 or 12 or 15 years. So I got a lot of plans, but I'm only going to get there if I stay healthy. Now, even though I don't have any type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes or anything like that, again, I've been blessed. I'm still fascinated with this product. Now, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not a doctor. This is just my personal experience, and we all have different metabolisms. It's going to affect us all differently. I sleep better because of what I've learned from Signos. And by that, I mean, I'm super sensitive to spikes, to glucose spikes. I'm always have been. And sometimes sugar has the opposite effect on me and carbs than it has on most people. But for the longest time, I had the hardest time sleeping. And I'm not proud to say over a long period of time, I was, give me an Ambien and 6 or 8 beers and I'll probably fall asleep. Well, for at least 3 hours, 4 hours. And I'd wake up wide awake. And for so long, I tried everything. And for so long, I just said, well, screw it. I'm just going to be this way for the rest of my life. And then I started reading and researching and learning how someone like me who is super sensitive to glucose and spikes, it disrupts sleep. So I started paying attention because of the Signos monitor, paying attention to what I would consume 4, 5, 6 hours before I wanted to go to sleep. And yep, a lot of the things that I was eating, even though it was healthy, there were a lot of carbs in it, or there was sugar in it. Sometimes it's things you wouldn't expect, like fruit, doing the right thing. And in some cases you are. But for me, all of that, even though I wasn't drinking anymore, I didn't take the Ambien, but those things were keeping me awake. And once I realized, I made the connection between what my monitor said and the way I was feeling, it was like, boom, light bulb, change my diet, sleep like a rock. It can be that simple. It was for me.
Check it out. Signos.com, Signos.com, and be sure to use our promo code 83 Weeks. It's a game changer. You'll be glad you did. So listen, man, I want to talk to you about discipline and story and all that in regards to AEW, because you made that comparison, but I want to do it at the end of the show because I think it might have a spoiler for some of our live studio audience. Let's touch on some other WWE news and then we'll jump into our topic. Well, I guess along the way, we'll handle a couple other pieces of news too. But I do know for sure that there was a big controversy this past weekend when seemingly at a kind of random time, Friday evening, WWE released several talent, and it was pointed out online that all of these were persons of color. And the biggest name on the list was Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal is a former WWE champion, and WWE really doubled down on trying to corner that market in India. I guess it was 2017. He became the world champ, but I mean, he's been a part of this company for a long, long time with 3-man band, and we would see all of those guys go away and then come back. He reinvented his body. I mean, just totally changed his look. I don't know, maybe almost 10 years ago, and was immediately enjoying some success. And it felt like they put him on the back burner. He hasn't been used a lot, but earlier this year they dusted him off and he more than held his own against The Rock. And it created a little bit of an online back and forth with Tony Khan, but this is a universally beloved guy, a guy that I've had a chance to meet and talk about watches with and really think a lot of. But I mean, everybody he worked with, all of his coworkers, they really tell the tale of how Jinder was the guy. And so I kind of thought, this is a story. This is an angle. They wouldn't have released all of this talent from India at the exact same time unless they're going to come back in maybe on Speed or something like that. And there's a new faction. That's where my brain went. But that was 2 days ago. Now it certainly feels like, damn, this might actually be real. They might actually be releasing all these folks. What'd you make of this news, Eric?
Not sure what to make of it. First of all, before we go any further, because I'll forget this shit, you know how I am. But if I was Tony Khan, and if Jinder is available and this isn't a storyline, I'd hire him so fast. Going back to the comments, you know, that Tony made about Jinder, and that started a whole thing. I mean, it started the internet fire for about 3 days, 4 days. It was awesome. It was fun to watch. People are nuts, man. People are nuts on Twitter, and I'm here for it all. It's the most entertaining thing for me to sit down and watch some of these people crazy. But I would take advantage of that. Take advantage of the fact, Tony, that you stirred up a bunch of shit by throwing a grenade, so to speak. It wasn't a grenade. It was a firecracker. It was a tiny little firecracker. What, poof, didn't even make much noise. But boy, did people react to it. Now you get kind of a built-in, I don't know, at least an incident to start from, something, a spark of an idea to do something fun. Have Jinder come in, Tony, and make you fear for your life.
Oh, will you stop? I mean, listen.
No, seriously. I'm having a little fun with it, with the fear for your life shit, but I'm actually serious about, why not?
I would love to see it, but I guess the question is, I mean, really, it wasn't anybody else who tweeted it at Jinder. It was Tony. That would almost imply that you would like to see Tony Khan as a television character.
Oh, fuck. No.
That's what you just said.
No.
That's what you just said.
No. I would use Tony because Tony's the one that lobbed the firecracker. I would use him as the part of the inciting incident, the thing that sparks what we're going to see in terms of a story. And then I would have Tony, being the chicken shit heel that he is. He's actually turning into a heel right before our eyes. He doesn't even realize it yet. But Tony, I'm the chicken shit heel because this is going to get Jinder over. If this storyline plays out, it'll get Jinder over. It'll be one of the biggest baby faces of the company. Kind of like MJF did it, only a little more well-planned and less spontaneous, I guess. But have Tony surround himself with whatever heels he's trying to get over, and let them, Tony's protector. And you may see Tony run, may see him, jump and leave his desk or something if somebody breaks into his office, but you'll never see him. Don't ever give him a microphone. Oh my God, please don't ever do that. It'll ruin everything. But a storyline kind of like that, or anything remotely close to that, would be interesting. It would be kind of timely in a way. We're talking a couple months ago, but still timely enough. People still remember. You remembered. Jog my memory. So yeah, go for it.
What if, I think there's a chance that this could happen. Like, I really, really do, because it does feel like Tony has put himself on television a little more. I mean, he was just in a backstage segment with the Young Bucks where they were watching at Gorilla. They were watching a clip and the whole deal. And I thought, wow, okay, Tony's on the regular TV, not necessarily with a big announcement or whatever as the leader of the company, but in the story, in the Young Bucks story. So it would be interesting to see Jinder Mahal show up there, but I don't know that Tony wants to be a television character, but I think if you're going to have Jinder over there, you kind of got to have him.
I don't really want to be a television character, but I put myself on television all the time. What the hell? Come on. Who are we kidding here with this bullshit? That's the thing that drives me crazy about some of this stuff is everybody thinks they're so smart and they're able to hide their biases. Dave Meltzer, I'm talking to you, bitch. And people who think they're better on camera than they really are think that, people can't see through their shit. I don't want to be a character. I don't want to be a character, but he's on TV every chance he gets. So why don't I said the same thing was true with Dixie Carter, by the way. Oh, you're so sweet. I just don't think I could ever put myself on TV. Oh no, Dixie, really. If I think you can do. Oh, I just couldn't do that. I mean, I appreciate it and all. You're so sweet, but I just can't do it. Ha! Couldn't wait to be on television.
Right now, I need you to write down exactly what all you've consumed this morning. How much Kratom and coffee? Get that ratio, get that mix on file, because this is prime Eric Bischoff, and I need to know the formula to get back here. So write it down before we forget, because you're on a roll today. When you started doing that designing woman, I do declare, I was like, oh my God, where are we going? By the way, today, Eric, is a happy anniversary. It is the 6-year anniversary of 83 weeks. So happy anniversary, baby. We've had a lot of fun on this show, yelling about Starrcade 97, talking about the nonsense of the finger poke of doom and the Bash of the Beach 2000 and so much more. And you even got your head shaved on more than one occasion. We've had a lot of fun here, but I know I'm going to tee you up and have a little fun when I talk about Dave Meltzer's tweet this week. He says Raw Monday did a 1.81/0.61. That's the demo. Strong numbers and beat the WNBA draft, which did 2.45 million and 0.58 in the demo. Or for those of you who hate AEW irrationally without the slightest understanding that demo ratings benefit WWE just as much, you can tell yourself it took second. So it was number one in the demo, but second overall. But I just love that he had to bring AEW into the conversation. And I sort of had this epiphany a few weeks ago where I said, wow, I don't know how this was lost on me, but all this quote unquote tribalism, which is a buzzword that you've grown to hate, Eric, that exists in the internet wrestling community, it was largely created and put there by Dave Meltzer. And that really had not dawned on me until a few weeks ago. But this tweet feels like a perfect example of exactly that. Like, he's talking about WWE versus WNBA, but somehow we got to slide the AEW conversation in there.
He's so fucking twisted up right now because Dave hooked his wagon to AEW. It was Dave's wet dream come true. He was living vicariously through Tony Khan. These two guys think a lot, they love the same type of wrestling. And God, again, there's nothing wrong with the indie style of wrestling. There are aspects of going to indie events that I really, really like more than you could ever imagine. You may find out soon just how much I love indie wrestling. But for the moment, let me just say that there's a lot of it I like. And I like the fact it's like, in my book, Grateful, I talked about going to an event in New Mexico. And in my head, because I was all fucked up and turned inside out because of what I was going through on a personal basis and financially. And I was kind of, I had to do this event. I really wanted to because the guys seemed really nice on the phone. But at the end of the day, I jumped in my truck with my dog and I drove from Cave Creek, Arizona to Albuquerque, New Mexico, in large part because I needed to. And I was angry at myself for that. And I got to the arena, and it was in a sketchy part of town. That's not fair to say sketchy, but it was not in the part of town let's put it this way. There weren't a lot of outdoor seating restaurants in the neighborhood. Okay. But I got there early because I was supposed to be surprised. I didn't want anybody to advertise me. And that was one of the conditions. And I kind of went to the back of the arena and I saw the people coming in. And it brought me back. It brought me back to when I was a kid and went to wrestling events. Energy was different. And when I finally made it into the building, remember, I came through the back door. Obviously, these are all local independent wrestlers. And there's nobody of any consequence on the card other than me and whatever. But I went into that backstage area and the vibe that hit me was so fucking cool. So inspirational and aspirational at the same time. Some of those people were young wrestlers that really were hoping someday they were going to get that break and they're going to find their way to NXT or find their way to AEW, find their way to TNA. They're really hoping, just to see a camera would be a major accomplishment. And you see that there and you feel that energy and that excitement and God, not to get crazy like over this, but there's a purity that no longer exists by the time you get to a WWE, where this is truly a profession. I mean, the energy is different. It's impressive in WWE. Don't get me wrong, and it's friendly and it's fun. Can be sometimes, but the energy in the indie scene is so cool and so real and authentic. It's not that I don't like indie wrestling at all. So if you do, there's nothing wrong with it, whether you're Tony Khan or Dave Meltzer, whatever. But the tribalism aspect of if you don't like what we like, then you're just a clown or you don't really matter. That's the problem that Tony's having right now. And it's largely because of his like-mindedness at the very least, if not more, connection to Meltzer. Because they're creating the tribalism that they're whining about. Tony Khan himself, was it a week ago, whatever it was, came out and said, the only thing that's real is that the companies hate each other. Why is people always, every time I turn around, somebody's making fun of it, no matter if we do a good show, and then the next time somebody says something bad. Why the fuck do you think that happens, Tony? You're begging for it. And Dave Meltzer is aiding and abetting. This shit was a crime. They'd both be in jail. And it's only interesting and a way fun. I know I sound like I'm more passionate about it than I am because I find it so obvious. It's entertaining and comical. But so many people are buying into this. And that's where the tribalism. Dave did it right there. He absolutely embedded reaction for his next tweet or reaction for his next whatever he does on YouTube. He's creating content. That's what Dave does. He says stupid shit, spreads stupid rumors, makes dumb comparisons, tries to convince everybody that he's like some kind of fucking highly evolved intellectual wrestling savant. He's just a fucking creep that likes a certain style of wrestling and thinks everybody else that doesn't see what he sees isn't on his intellectual level when it comes to professional wrestling. He's a fucking clown. He can't structure a sentence, more or less give you insight and analysis into a business he's never been involved in. How did we get on this conversation?
Well, we talked
you brought it up, Dave Cody, this week, Dave Meltzer said.
Yeah, we were talking about his comparing the WWE rating for Monday Night Raw with the WNBA draft. Let's talk about some other news from this week. We saw another article from Forbes saying that AEW is worth $2 billion. Mike Ozanian, I think is his name. And here's the quote here. His assessment included various financial aspects of AEW's business, indicating that it has been consistently generating more revenue year over year, despite some debates about its profitability. Additionally, comparisons have been made to other combat sports franchises to contextualize AEW's market value, with some analysts suggesting that if companies like Bellator are valued at around 500 million, AEW's more substantial brand presence and revenue would justifiably place at a much higher valuation. Of course, there was a valuation of Bellator that said it was 500, but I think it actually traded for under 100 in an all stock deal. I guess what I'm saying is, guys, these valuations, they can pretty much say whatever they want. It's not a real indicator of what the perceived value is. I mean, you don't have to look very far in the wrestling space to see like a company like Triller. Man, those guys have been trying to go public forever. And supposedly they were valued at billions and billions of dollars. And then, well, every time you Google them, they're being sued here or there, or not paying this bill or that bill. And they're finally going to go public. I don't know, 4 or 5 years later. I'm just saying all that to say, let's not get too caught up in the Forbes numbers. AEW's not for sale. And even if they were for sale, I don't know who would pay $2 billion. Like legitimately, like, I don't see why this was even a discussion this week. They're not for sale. Go ahead.
I do. And it comes back to what we were just talking about. Dave Meltzer, for the last year and a half or so, I'll be careful about what I say, because I can't pull his tweet up and go, see, here it is. I can find it if I have to, but I'd rather not spend the time. But Dave has been talking to, now he's quieted down a lot all over the last few months as AEW is getting closer and closer to the expiration of its exclusivity in terms of selling the show. But Dave, a year ago, now Tony Khan's going to triple his rights. He's going to get double his rights. He's going to be making so much money. Dave Meltzer putting over how much money Tony is going to make or when he renews. And in the basis for that is exactly what this cat, Michael Zenian or whatever his name was, did the same thing. Well, and Dave was comparing it to other sports leagues, which is really weird because wrestling is not a sport, no matter how hard people try to convince others that it is. It is scripted television. It's scripted live action television. It falls into its own category. Now, you could sell it as a sport, I guess, if you could get people to buy into it from an ad sales point of view. But it is scripted television. But nonetheless, Dave Meltzer, because he's an analyst, spends time reading and studying. I don't know what the fuck he reads and studies, but was making, suggestions much like he does in that headline that we looked at. He's got to get it in there. Oh, now Tony Khan's going to enjoy a significant increase in license fees based on the license fees for the NHL or any other example that Dave was giving. So he said, well, if they are worth X, therefore AEW is worth Y based on it. It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's fucking clickbait. It's exactly what it is, because the writer in Forbes got to put those logos up there, right? The UFC logo, WWE logo, NFL, whatever it was. Gets to put all those sports brands up there. Great. It's fucking clickbait. You can go through anybody's financials. Give me an audited valuation. Talk. Otherwise, my house is worth $7 million.
Oh, there you go.
Conrad, it is.
No, I believe
I value my house at $7 million. Because right up the road from me, Bill Gates has a ranch.
Kanye West does too.
Kanye West, right down the other road. So, yeah, 7 million. That's it.
Just less than a couple months ago, or right at a couple months ago, Dave Meltzer tweeted out, Forbes was $2 billion. They literally just did that in their Khan family valuation of their sports franchises at $8.5 billion in an article that just came out. I disagree with it, but that's the value they had on it. So now even Dave is saying, I don't know if that 2 million or 2 billion is accurate. But here's my thing. It's not for sale. Who cares? What does it matter? I tend to agree with you that Tony Khan has become a heel to a certain corner of the internet wrestling community. And I feel like it's largely just misplaced. Like, Who cares? I mean, people are like, well, the buildings aren't full. He's not making money. What does any of that matter? Do you enjoy the fucking product? Like, why can't we just watch the matches and say we like them or we don't?
But Conrad, why do people do it? Because of Dave Meltzer and Tony Khan.
Well, Dave Meltzer.
They're the reason. They're the answer to the question you just posed. Yes, people should just go, what the fuck? Who cares? I don't care how much money Tony Khan makes. I just want to watch this, or I'm looking forward to that in AEW. That's all the fuck should matter, right? But it doesn't, because Tony Khan himself and his cohort in this conspiracy of con artistry, they're creating it because it creates buzz, it creates interest. And I mean, I plan on doing this on YouTube, but this will end up on YouTube anyway. Is the tribalism that bad? I think it's childish. I think it's stupid. And I find it entertaining as fuck. But it is kind of stupid. But if that's all you got, that's the only way you're going to get people to talk about your product. Then Tony, Dave, keep doing what you're doing.
I mean,
don't bitch about it, because now you're looking like kind of a wimp. Whew, said something.
You almost said a P word there.
It was right.
You can say that. I think that's okay. Hey,
no, I don't want to.
Are you dropping the F-bombs?
Yeah, but F-bombs are like S-bombs now. Nobody.
Don't be a pussy, Eric. Hey, let's talk about that tribalism for a minute, and then I do want to move on. I guess we should hit some ticket numbers too, but you know what? I'll do that right now. WWE. Let's talk about some good news for a minute. I think this is and WrestleTix, I believe, even said this. This might be the most attended non-televised event in WWE history. We used to call them house shows. I guess now they're just live event, non-televised live event, whatever. What a fantastic shot of Cody there in front of a huge crowd at the O2 in London. 16,410 fans, an unbelievable number. And they're going to be continuing to set records as they continue to travel around. I mean, how crazy is this to even think about? WWE is not going to run another PLE in America until SummerSlam. Everything else is international, and it's because they're doing this huge business like this. Meanwhile, Collision and Rampage made their debut in Peoria, Illinois, in front of just over 3,000 people the night before the Dynasty pay-per-view. And I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm just saying, here's the barometer, and here's sort of the score, if you will, of where they are. And I just don't understand why that tribalism exists. Like, it's clear that there is the recognized leader in sports entertainment. And then there's AEW. But the back and forth, to me, it's like, what is the end game behind that, Eric? Like, do we want to keep hounding on AEW until it doesn't exist anymore? Do we want to keep pounding on WWE until their business falls off and they let more people go? How about just fucking watch the show and enjoy what you enjoy and put the keyboards down and let these guys try to grow their business? I just don't, it's not a comparison. Let's stop.
You sound just like me about 2.5 years ago when I cut that promo on Tony Khan after he came out and said, if Ted Turner knew 1% about professional wrestling as I do, WCW would still be in business. That was my fuck you, Tony moment. And from that moment, before I got actually aggressive about it, and I was just being honest, I came out on this show and said, Tony, shut up and wrestle. Quit punching up. You can't even see that guy's chin more or less make contact. Quit punching up. Quit comparing yourself. Quit taking shots. Quit trying to convince the audience that your product is a better product when it's not. But I was considered a hater. Tony Khan blew your phone up. Couldn't believe I said what I said. Took it personally. And I felt bad about that. And I actually tried to call Tony and apologize for making him upset, because that wasn't my intention. My message was absolutely fucking as sincere as if he were sitting in front of me, because I would have delivered it the same impassioned way. But rather than listen, I don't expect Tony Khan to listen to me. I wouldn't listen to me either if I was Tony Khan. So it's not that. But the internet wrestling community, that's what we're talking about here, the tribalism that exists and all the hostility going back and forth and the silliness of it all, actually the humor of it all. Tony Khan is creating it.
Right.
He has from the jump. His brand, his strategy, and I don't know that he ever articulated the strategy or wrote it down. I don't know if it was communicated, but it was clear that they wanted to create that Monday Night Wars vibe without actually being in a war. They wanted to pretend they were in a war, and they wanted to convince, more importantly, not only themselves, but they wanted to convince their audience. They wanted to galvanize the audience behind them, much like Paul Heyman did in ECW as the underdog. But that was the mistake Tony made, is he wasn't coming at the audience, the broader, the let's say 3 or 4 million active weekly wrestling viewers that are out there to be had, right? He didn't do it in a way that was going to attract that audience. He did it in a way that offended them. By saying, was the product that you love, that you watch every week, well, that's the shits. We watch is better. We do is better. And that's okay if you're actually and this is the other part that's lost on so many people that exist on the internet and write some of the funniest shit because they're so clearly uninformed. But the difference is, take swings, call them out. Tell the world you have a better product, if indeed you do, or at least you think you do. And in Tony's case, I think he does believe he does have a better product. But do it if you're face-to-face, if you're head-to-head. If you're in the ring, go ahead, square off, trade punches, see who's the last man standing. Because people like that. That's combative. It's dramatic. It's the same reason people watch wrestling. It's combative. It's dramatic. There's good guys. There's bad guys. That's okay. Feed into that. Play that as long as you're actually willing to compete. But don't do it like some punk on the sidelines telling a little girl sitting next to you, your girlfriend, you're in the high school parking lot, and you're 15 years old, and your little 14-year-old girlfriend sitting next to you saying, see that big bull over there? I could kick his ass. I'm better than he. I'm tougher than he. I could kick his ass. And the minute that guy turns around and looks at you, you fucking run the other way and whine about it. A little biatch.
Hey, let me ask you about that, because this just clicked for me earlier this week. I've been thinking a lot about what I said last week here on the show, and you just sort of repeated it about the whole, hey, what if he would have went the Paul E way? What if he would have went the ECW way? We're the little engine that could. We're the underdog, blah, blah, blah. Maybe the reason that was a challenge for Tony is, well, my buddy Cody used to say in wrestling, sometimes there's handsome guy heat. Maybe there's rich guy heat. Like, I had a wealthy guy I knew once who said, do you know why anybody buys their 11th Rolls Royce? And I said, no, why would anybody buy 11 Rolls Royces? He said, because their neighbor has 10. Oh, okay. And I don't have a yacht, never going to have a yacht, but I'm friends with guys who run in those type circles, and they're always looking to trade up. And the conversation is always about, well, so-and-so got one, so I got to get a bigger, better one. It becomes, I guess, what we say in Alabama, a dick measuring contest. And on some level, the Khans had more money than the McMahons from day one. So maybe that's the reason Tony didn't want to embrace the underdog thing. I don't know if that's it. I've never been a billionaire, never going to be a billionaire, but
I don't know. Not inside of Tony's head. Obviously, I don't know him well enough. So when I say that's not it, my perception is that wasn't it at all. Because if that was it, there's a way to manage that. If the way you manage it is don't come out and say, I've got more money than Vince McMahon. First of all, it's not your money. It's your daddy's money. You just got you're a member of the Lucky Sperm Club.
Oh, come on. God damn it.
It's true. He was born into wealth. It's not deniable. It's not even rude. It's not even mean.
Well, so are Shane and Stephanie. So let's just throw them in there too. Okay.
They were born into the Lucky Sperm Club.
Okay, goddamn.
And so is Trump's kid. There's a lot of people that are born into it. That doesn't mean that you have to brag about it.
Lord have mercy.
What, am I wrong?
I just never imagined we'd be on this program on our 6th anniversary talking about Lucky Sperm Club, which is our new sponsor, luckyspermclub.com. Not really.
Now, if we don't segue into a BlueChew commercial right now, then neither one of us are worth a fuck.
You know what? You call for it right now. Let's do it. I don't know why Eric has a hard on for Tony Khan, or maybe why Dave Meltzer has one for WWE, but you can get a hard on for no damn good reason. Thanks to our friends at BlueChew.com. They've been a day one sponsor for us here on the show. And if you haven't tried it already, what are you waiting for? BlueChew is a unique online service that delivers to you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. You just sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, man, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Sincerely, this is a big deal. If you've not tried this before, what are you waiting for? Let me just explain what this is about. We've all had bad pizza, and you know where I'm going. You've heard that expression before. Hey, bad pizza is like bad sex. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. But why would you knowingly eat bad pizza when you know great pizza is within your grasp? Nobody drives past the good pizza place to get to the bad pizza. And that's what you're doing if you're skipping past this ad and not trying BlueChew. Because your partner is going to feel a difference. You're going to feel a difference. It's not just physical. It is going to be emotional. It's going to be spiritual. I'm telling you, if you want to have the best sex you've ever had, you need BlueChew. BlueChew wants to help you have better sex. They'll help you discover your options at BlueChew.com and chew it and do it. Try it one time. I'm telling you, you're going to be, as JR would call it, in a reorder situation. But right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free. That's right. It's free when you use our promo code 83 weeks at checkout. You just pay the $5 shipping. BlueChew will take care of the rest. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is 83 weeks. You'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast. So Eric, our topic today, we should shift gears, stop talking about sperm, is Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling. Now, this is an episode that you and I have tried to do, I don't know, for 6 weeks. And boy, the news just kept coming. But today we said, all right, time out. We're going to look at that rearview mirror today. And we have not spent a ton of time talking about your life in television. And most everyone listening to this is listening because they're familiar with your work with WCW. And I think a lot of people don't realize that after WCW, you got knee deep in the television game. Do you remember, can you tell us a little bit about your production company with Jason Hervey, what the name of it was, how many employees y'all did, how many shows you had or developed? Just talk to us a little bit about your television life, because a lot of our listeners, they don't know.
Yeah, it was, Jason and I we met through WCW, and became friends.
Jason Hervey from the Wonder Years.
Jason Hervey. Yes, I should back that up. I assume everybody knows it, but Jason Hervey, was one of the stars, ABC's Wonder Years. It was a massive hit of a show. Actually, it's in the Smithsonian Television Institute, Washington, D.C. There's recognition of that show because of its representation of culture at that time in a primetime show. It was a really good show. Really, really, really well done. But Jason had been acting even before Wonder Years. Jason, I think, started acting when he was about 4 years old, did a lot of commercials, went over to Japan as a kid, did a lot of commercials in Japan, got back to the States. His mother, Marcia, who I was very, very friendly with, she's since passed, as has Jason's father, Al. But I was pretty friendly with both of them. I was actually closer to their age than I was with Jason. So, Jason's about your age, maybe a little older. But because we were friends in WCW and Jason Hervey, interestingly enough, another little tidbit here, worked for a company by the name of once Jason was done with Hollywood and he I think Wonder Years might have been the last series that he did. He didn't really want to be an actor anymore. Dabbled in professional wrestling while he was still with the Wonder Years, actually, and that's where I met him. But after that, he had no interest in pursuing acting. He had been in movies. He did a Pee Wee Herman movie and a Back to the Future movie. And so he had some chops and he made a ton of cash as a young kid, but he'd had enough and he wanted to produce. Well, before he and I teamed up to launch our own television company, Jason Hervey went to work for a guy by the name of Peter Scrushy. Peter Scrushy was enamored with Jason's connective tissue in Hollywood. Richard Scrushy wanted to be a music guy, wanted to have record labels, wanted to produce TV shows. He was like a CEO of Health South. But what he really wanted to do was be a music.
He wanted to be a star. Yeah.
And a television star. So he looked at Jason, and because of Jason's relationships, and Jason had extensive relationships in Hollywood, still does to this day. But Scrushy zeroed in on that, hired Jason Hervey as a VP of marketing, I think was the title, maybe something. Something that Jason was generally familiar with marketing. He worked for Peter Guber and Mandalay Entertainment. So Jason's a very bright guy. He learned a lot, but he had never been in an executive position. But Scrushy didn't care. Moved them to Alabama, to Birmingham. Jason had access to one of Scrushy's jets whenever he wanted it to go back and visit in California. I mean, it was really cool until it wasn't. And I bring Scrushy up because of his connection to Jeff Jarrett in TNA. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. A little bit of relevance, I guess. But I remember I was with WWE. In fact, there was a WrestleMania going on in Seattle.
19.
Yeah. And I literally on my way to Seattle. I was living in Phoenix at the time. And I get a phone call from Jason, and he's in a panic. He said, Eric, our offices at Health South just got raided by the FBI.
Oh,
they're taking everything. He was panicked, and Jason was an officer of the company. And Scrushy and Jason were, they were joined at the hip. They were everywhere together. So Jason started the panic, and I said, Jay, just let's do this. I know your wife is with the kids and your mom and dad. Jump on a plane right now. Meet me in Seattle. At least get the fuck out of Birmingham. You don't want to be wondering about every car that drives by your neighborhood if it's the FBI coming to serve you. So rather than stressing yourself out any more than you already are, jump on a fucking plane and come to Seattle. There. And he did. And we kind of talked through, I did my best to get his mind off at least, what he was worried about the most. And part of that process was talking about, okay, what next? And it was in Seattle that Jason and I said, well, we should just start our own production company. We'd already worked on some other projects together. Jason and I worked very closely on outside projects for WCW. We developed an animation product called Chowder Heads with two guys that went on to become hugely successful film directors and producers. We did the home video series for Universal Home Video. So we had been working together in a variety of different ways. We did a music deal with Tommy Boy Records together. So we said, Jason, and I was no longer with WCW. I was, a talent in WWE, which means I could go do anything else I wanted to do. I said, Jason, why don't we just start our own production company? And literally within 2 weeks, we were on our way. And we launched Bischoff Hervey Entertainment, or BHE.TV, and took advantage of Jason's relationships in Hollywood. I had some of my own relationships there and had gotten the attention of some pretty influential people because of what I was doing with Turner at the time. And we just said, fuck it, let's do it. And I think the first reality show that we did, I should say they were all reality shows, all but one or two of was I Want to Be a Hilton with Kathy and Rick Hilton, Paris Hilton's mother. And we sold that through a company called Reveille Entertainment, and sold it to NBC. That was our first one out of the chute. And we just went on from there. Can't tell you the number of shows that we did, that we sold. And with our shows, somebody didn't come to us and say, here's a television show we want to do. We want you to produce it. We sat down and went, all right, what can we sell? Who's buying what? What is the market looking for? Let's identify what the market is looking for, what's hot right now, or what we think, and this is where the art comes in. It's not what's hot right now, it's what people think is going to be hot next year.
That's right.
That's what you want to be pitching.
That's right.
If you're pitching what's hot now, you're pitching where the puck was.
You're behind, yeah.
We're constant, because both of us had really good agents. I was represented by William Morris and CAA at different times. Had some good contacts there, and Jason was as well. And our agents kind of knew where things were going. So we said, okay, if that's where it's going, let's work backwards and have something to pitch. And we did. And I would imagine we probably created out of thin air and sold and produced 20, 30 different shows. Usually 6 or 8 episodes each, sometimes multiple seasons, sometimes not. Yeah, we did a lot of stuff. We sold to NBC, CMT, VH1, MTV, True TV.
Yeah, VH1, MTV, True TV, A&E, AMC, Discovery. CMT. Yeah, I mean, so many stations and so many shows, and I think a lot of our listeners aren't really familiar with that. So for everybody who loves to clown on Eric Bischoff online, well, you're probably not a listener of the show, because if you were, you would know he knows a thing or two about television. And respectfully, I think I have this right. He's produced more television and created more television content. I'm not talking about in the wrestling space. I mean, outside of wrestling space, than anybody else in the space. I don't think it's even that close, Eric. Do you? Nobody has.
I never thought about it that way, but you're absolutely.
So I'm just saying, when people are like, well, what the hell does he know? He bankrupted 2 companies. Not true. But separately, who knows more about television than a guy who put up dozens of television shows with different networks, with NBC, with VH1, with MTV, with True TV, with A&E, with AMC, with CMT. Notice I never said TBS and TNT. You know what he did there. I didn't say Spike. You know what he did there. I'm saying all the other stuff outside of wrestling. Put some respect on Eric Bischoff's name. God damn it. Let's talk a little bit about CMT. That's Country Music Television. That's where Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling is going to happen. How do you first get hooked up with CMT, and how do you pitch the big man on this idea? Is he excited for it? What's Jason think about it? How was it received with CMT? Talk to me about all that.
Yeah. Again, kind of describing the scenario that I did a few moments ago about pitching where things are going. Right around this time, there were discussions about Dancing with the Stars, because if you look at reality started out as real people, right? That was the attraction. These are just real people, could be your next door neighbor in these bizarre situations, and we're watching real people react to real drama. Well, none of that was true, but it looked like it was true. It was kind of like wrestling in that regard, right? For the most part. There were some that were pretty legit, but 90% of them were not. And then we started hearing about, we want, that type of reality, when Road Rules, I think, was the first one. MTV did the first kind of real reality show.
Real World and Road Rules. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were like the first ones. Although reality television was a very, very successful style of television presentation. It was a really, really successful format in Europe. But like a lot of things, it gets hot in Europe, and about 6 to 8 years later, it ends up getting hot here, whether it's music or fashion or whatever. But so the reality format had been around a long time, relatively new to the United States. MTV did it first. Then there was a writer's strike, kind of thrown in right about the time that reality television was just beginning to land on the shores here in the U.S. in terms of television product. Right about that time, there's a writer's strike, an extensive one. And all scripted television shut down. So now there's a rush. Every cable outlet out there and network outlet were, because they had air to fill. They would be running reruns, in prime time. So there was panic, and it flooded the market with so much reality television. A lot of it was horse shit. I mean, it was just horribly produced, but people were buying anything. It was just like, kind of like, the internet, IPOs back in the day. Just people were buying it. You put it down on a piece of paper and pitch it, somebody's going to buy that shit. It was wonderful in a way. It allowed a lot of us who were starting production companies to get started. If you were talented, you had credibility, you had relationships, you had a shot to make it. And a lot of people did. Long story short, that type of presentation, real people, real situations, theoretically, kind of started losing its flavor because there was such a dearth of it, so much of it. And then it was like, oh, we need to get some celebrities and mix them in with real people and reality. And okay, we can do that. The original idea was my idea. The original idea that I pitched to Jason is, let's take real people, train them, teach them, so the people that watching on television can learn the process. And WWE had already done Tough Enough. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be different than Tough Enough. So that's where the elimination. And Jason, by the time I said, no, let's use real people, now Jason's involved. Jason immediately goes to, no, we need to do celebrities. Because he was right. That's where the business was going anyway. And it's easier to sell when there's celebrities attached. I was kind of stuck in I can be stubborn.
Sometimes. Really?
Yeah, happened. I was stuck in it. So Jason and I decided, hey, let's go. We fleshed the idea out, meaning, we laid out an episode and what it looked like, what the goals were, kind of described it in a little PowerPoint. And we made an appointment to go through our agent, Hans Schiff. Hey, Hans, how are you, buddy? Tana's doing well. Thank you very much. We went and pitched this lady by the name of Melanie Moreau. Melanie Moreau she was like this senior. Oh, there she is. I love Melanie. Oh, I'm so glad you got a shot of Melanie. She is the coolest chick in the world. Lori and I we're friends. Her daughters have come out here to Wyoming. Her daughter and her husband, newly married husband, came out and camped out on our property 2 years ago. Keep asking Melanie to come out. She came out with her daughters when they were real young, stayed with us. And she's awesome. But I met Melanie probably, through our agent pitching this show. And she loved the idea of wrestling. They saw the value. Wrestling was still hot. People loved wrestling. And this was a variation of it. But she was really, really adamant about celebrities, which I knew that would end up happening eventually. So I did what I do, or I did what I did back then. At the time, I was actually working very closely with Hulk. I was sure if it was exactly at this period or adjacent to it, but Hulk was in bad shape, surgery, divorce, issue with his son, Nick. There was a lot on him. And at some point, I literally took over all of his business. I had signing authority for contracts and agreements and branding opportunities. And Hulk basically told me, you speak for me until I can pull the nose up on this thing. Whatever you agree to do on my behalf is fine with me.
Wow.
So I called Hulk. I said, here's what we've got. Here's the idea. And I walked him through the idea on the phone. Enough, because I knew Hulk, you could explain something to him on the phone at the time, and he would go, yeah, that sounds really interesting. By the time he hung up, 20 minutes later, he wouldn't remember what you were talking about. That's how much stuff was going on in his life and why he handed some of it off. So I flew to Tampa. I was in LA at the time, living in LA most of the time. And flew to Tampa and sat down and laid the show out to him. I think Jason came with me on that one. Yeah, he did. And we laid it out. Hogan tagged in, and then Jason went about going, I got Dennis Rodman because of my relationship with Dennis.
Hey, time out. I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to give some timeline here. You sort of ran through what was going on in Hulk's life, but Hogan Knows Best started on television, I think in 2005. It went through 2007. I know what you're thinking. So 2 seasons? No, 4 seasons. There's 4 seasons of Hogan Knows Best, and it did really, really well, or else they wouldn't have the subsequent 2nd, 3rd, and 4th season. But then, of course, the real life Terry Bollea circumstance and marriage and household changed. So you're fresh off of Hogan Knows Best. So I'm sure that CMT was, no matter what baggage and what may have been going on behind the scenes, it's all freaking Hogan, a pop culture icon from the 80s and 90s. And he's fresh off of another reality show. It feels like, well, yeah, this is a no-brainer, right? To start this show.
Yeah, and keep in mind that CMT and VH1, where Hogan Knows Best aired, are owned by the same company. It's Viacom. Right.
Yes.
So it's not like, Viacom, VH1, CMT, it's all the same thing. They absolutely knew what was going on in Hogan's life because they saw it firsthand producing the reality show. That's when the wheels started falling off the Hogan situation, family situation. But they also knew what Hogan could deliver. And in this environment, because it was a wrestling environment, not his family, everybody felt more than comfortable. We ended up, Jason and our agents, we got, Danny Bonaducci and Todd Bridges and Erin Murphy. She was a little girl in Bewitched. I used to watch her when I was a kid. Now I'm teaching her how to wrestle.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. We're going to talk about the celebrities, but you mentioned that you didn't really want to do Tough Enough because WWE had already done that. Isn't this Tough Enough, but with celebrities?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think, yes, it's not like it's a completely different idea.
Right.
Essentially, it's the same idea, but with a different spin on it. Look, there's only 5 basic flavors in food, but it's the combination of all those different flavors that, change the world. Same thing here. It's the same basic flavor, but we had to come up with different combinations of elements to make it feel different.
We should mention that this is going to be an elimination format amongst a lot of reality shows like Survivor. That elimination format, man, it really just gets people going. Was that something that was critical to the show as well, where people are being eliminated episodically?
Yeah. I mean, I often refer to formats and I should be more specific sometimes when I do that, because there's some people formats, okay, here's what we're going to do in the opening segment. Here's what we're going to do in the second segment. Here's what we're going to do in the break. It's just basically a layout of the show. That's not what I generally mean by formats. A format, when I refer to a format, especially in this context of a reality show, you're talking about a specific formula within that run of show. Right? So there are going to be certain elements at certain points in time throughout the running time of the show that are intentionally designed to create a certain reaction in the audience. Whether it's holding them through a commercial break, whether it's building anticipation for the final act, whether it's a callback to something that happened the week before in order to help advance a story, whatever it is, if a format is done properly, it's rinse and repeat. Now, the story and the actual events that take place within the format obviously change from week to week and minute to minute, but it's like a recipe. And the reality format, because it was a new thing in the US, now competition elimination had existed in Europe, as I said. Survivor came over, I believe, from either the UK or Australia as an existing show. It was just modified for the US, right? Much like we're doing with Tough Enough with this show. So when I refer to a format, I'm talking about a very unique, and oftentimes they're copyrighted. If you create a successful format in the world of television, just the formula, forget about the stars, the narrative, the location, throw all that shit out the window. I don't give a fuck. Because if I can create a unique formula that you can insert different types of stories into and characters into, that's kind of like inventing penicillin. That's where so many people that are really super successful in the television business isn't necessarily because they produce massive volumes of television. It's because they've created very unique formats and they copyright those formats. It's intellectual property and they can license those formats to other production companies around the world. Mucker Brothers just got an education in television production, sales, and distribution that you're not going to get anywhere else. You're just not.
So, for those of us who never saw the show, because I'll admit I saw one episode, but I wasn't really consuming wrestling at the time. I was building my business, wasn't watching a lot of television, and CMT was just not on my regular programming then, now, forever, not together. But talk to me about the concept. Just explain to everybody. You're going to get all these celebrities together. We assume there's going to be a training facility. There's going to be a ring. What is the goal? What is the process? What are we trying to accomplish?
I mean, there were two teams. There was Team Nasty and Team Beefcake. Oh, what did I loved having Brian Knobbs. Brian Knobbs ended up being, he's such a great character on television. Such a great character, especially not in the ring. Because he's got amazing. Anyway, so we had Team Beefcake. This sounds like a porn parody. We had Team Beefcake and Team Nasty, and each team had a certain number of baby faces and a certain number of heels, and they would both Brian Knobbs and Brutus would have to train those people on their team, and they had other coaches that would come in, guest coaches, and we would train them either to be a baby face or to be a heel. And it was time to book a match. We'd have our match and we'd have our judges, and we would judge everybody based on their wrestling skills, their promo skills, the way they carried themselves to the ring. We had to come up with some categories to judge so that we could have a winner and a loser. That was and the show was really more about them learning the process and exposing the process. And when I say exposing it, not let's ruin the business way. Obviously it did to a large degree, but it had already been done by then. So I feel like I was breaking any new virgin ground. But yeah, that was essentially the show and the drama that took place, backstage, and some of it we created, some of it was pretty real just because physically the fucking place was miserable to work in. We were in this giant former warehouse in south side of LA, kind of over by the UCLA campus, but not in a nice part of town. It was fucking hot, no air conditioning. Place was filthy. So it was perfect for producing reality television because everybody was miserable. It's awesome.
You wrote in your book, Grateful, the first thing I did was get a hold of Dennis Rodman. I'd worked with Dennis quite a bit. We were friends by this point, and he jumped right in with both feet. He's like the perfect person for this, is he not?
He is. And again, because of his relationship with Hulk more than me, I mean, Hulk and Dennis are so tight that I knew and I'd worked with Dennis enough to know that, scheduling wise is a pain in the ass sometimes. But as far as working with Dennis, I couldn't wait to work with Dennis again because I knew he was going to deliver. And I enjoy being around Dennis. Some people find it a challenge. I dig it.
Danny Bonaducci is another celebrity on the show. At the time, he was a very successful radio DJ, but most of us were first.
Hold on there, buddy. I lost you.
With the Partridge Family. Not the first time he's dealt with professional wrestling. He actually did a dark match during Spring Stampede 1994. So 2 for 2 on former WCW connective tissue. What was Danny like?
Danny was pretty crazy. Now, the reason why Danny was such a score for us as a cast member, and everybody's going, he's an old, he has been, child actor who happened to have one of the most successful radio shows, either in Chicago or New York. I can't remember. Had a huge, huge footprint in radio. So we knew that, with Danny, not only is he a celebrity, child star, a lot of notoriety, spent a lot of time in the headlines. and also had a gigantic footprint in radio that in a major market that would help us. We're going to get free promotion. But Danny I think he had been in rehab probably a number of times by this point, and he was pretty good. In fact, I don't think he cracked at all while we were in production, but he was challenging. He was a hothead. He frustrated easily, and it would escalate rapidly. But he's a great guy. He had a great sense. Obviously, you spend enough time as an actor, you have a sense for timing.
Yes.
And what the scene needs. It comes naturally to you when you've done it. For that reason, he made especially our backstage stuff so real and believable, because for the most part it was. We didn't rehearse a lot of stuff. And that was a great thing about working with former actors and actresses, is because you didn't have to lay out everything. You could say, here's the scenario. They know intuitively, professionally, they know what you're looking for. They know you're looking for drama, and they're able to find it in the scene and create it by themselves. And it creates a genuineness and authenticity, even though the situation's set up, it's contrived as fuck. Obviously, we're there with cameras. We have the set. This is all planned. But when you can take people, even though they may have been actors and actresses previously, put them in a realistic situation and just let them be themselves, you're going to get a much more realistic reaction. And Danny was a big part of that. So was Aaron Murphy. So a lot of the cast was. Todd Bridges was.
Let's talk about Aaron Murphy. You majorly put her over in your book. She played Tabitha on Bewitched. Why did she make such an impact on you?
Well, one is I used to watch Bewitched when I was young. And I remember her as, Elizabeth Montgomery, the witch character. That was her little baby, her and Darren. Had a baby. And the baby was a little baby witch. Baby witch. She could twinkle her nose. Watch closely. Watch. She would do that shit, and people would disappear, yes. Or a horse or a pony would show up in the backyard, or boom, a swimming pool comes up out of the ground from out of nowhere just by a little twitch of the nose. Cute little baby witch. But that's not so much it. I wasn't like a mark for the baby witch. But when I first met Aaron, I went, Jason, really? I don't see it. I mean, she looks like a PTA mom. She doesn't look like someone that's going to want to do this. I mean, I get it. She was a baby witch and a very successful baby witch, but damn, this is never going to work. And then I met her and I talked to her. I went, oh my gosh, she wants this. She wanted to win this. This was not, oh, I get a check and oh, maybe somebody will see me on this reality show and maybe I'll get my next gig. This was not that. This was a mother, and she had a ton of kids. I don't remember. I want to say 7. It could be wrong. She had a lot of them. Litter of them. Kids everywhere. And she wants to do this. She lives in Malibu. And she's going to come to South LA in July and August in a filthy warehouse, no air conditioning, and get thrown around, sweaty. She's not going to want to do this, but she did. She wanted to do it. And I fell in love with her because of that. I don't mean I fell in love with her. Like,
yeah.
We didn't have any BlueChew thing going on. But I mean, as a person, and to this day, we stay in touch. I really admire her. I think she's a great human being. She spends a lot of time, donates a lot of time, gets involved with a lot of great causes, and it's just a sweet person.
Some of the other celebrities involved were Tiffany. That's right, the singer from the 80s you're all familiar with. How about Sylvester Stallone's brother, Frank Stallone? Nikki Ziering, Butterbean, Todd Bridges, and Trishelle who recently made a splash on Peacock's The Traders. I guess Dustin Diamond, he was on there as well. One of the more well-known cast members from the Saved by the Bell series. And he had a reputation for not always being the easiest to deal with. What was your experience like with Dustin?
I had no issues working with Dustin. I enjoyed working with Dustin a lot, not just a little bit. I really enjoyed it. But I also didn't deal with him a lot. Jason did, because Jason had, Jason and Todd and Dustin. Jason grew up with a lot of these people. I mean, a lot of these guys were, the actors and actresses were actors and actresses as children when Jason was out auditioning.
Yes.
And they would see them. They kind of grew up together. I know it seems weird to say that, but they literally grew up, many of them, in the same neighborhood, generally. So, yeah, Jason handled a lot of stuff with Danny and Dustin, Todd. If there were issues, Jason dealt. There was nobody that wasn't a pleasure to work with. To be really honest with you, that's different than I expected. Now, granted, I hadn't worked with celebrities, former celebrities. Obviously in wrestling I did, but professional athletes are a little different. That's a different challenge than different opportunity, I should say, than working with actors and actresses. I expected the actors and actresses to be a little tougher to work with just because they had been familiar with being treated a certain way when they were active in the business. And sometimes people forget that, when you're up here, you get that really, that brand new limo, and you get, you're going to get first class all the time. And there's an occasional private jet in your future. And people are going to bend over backwards to make sure your fucking M&Ms are chilled or whatever the hell it is, whatever your weird gimmick is. But when you're no longer hot, a lot of that shit goes away. And some people have a hard time adjusting to that and try to work it a little bit, try to get more of that because it makes them feel better about themselves somehow. So that's what I expected. Got the exact opposite. Exact opposite from me.
Well, I'll tell you what you won't get the exact opposite from, and that's PrizePicks. They are the #1 daily fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. And I got to tell you, it's the one I've had the most fun with, and it's not even close. I felt like I was at a disadvantage playing with some of the other services. I'm playing against all the pros and all the sharks. Here, I'm just playing against the numbers. That's what I love about PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action of some of your favorite sports and players. And all you do is you pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and then just watch the winnings roll in. I mean, really, like right now, we're about to be knee deep in playoff season. Today, there's actually 8 playoff games as you and I are recording here. I could throw in a pick like this. Anthony Davis is going to get more than 2 blocks and Kevin Durant's going to get more than 28 points. And boom, I'm locked in. It's that simple. That's all you got to do. You don't have to do all the other rigmarole that you do with daily fantasy sports apps. You're just picking more than or less than. They give you the stat projection. They give you the player and you say, oh, he'll get more than that. Or no, he'll get less than that. It's that simple. So March is over, but man, April, come on, NBA playoffs. It's time. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level. I'm so fired up about NBA basketball this year, and you can win up to 100 extra money on PrizePicks with as little as just 4 correct picks. You turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball or hockey. All those entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. By the way, it's available in more than 30 states across the country. Yes, including California. Yes, including Texas. Yes, including Georgia. You can even see some of the celebrity picks like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley. Just click on the community plays tab and you'll see exactly who all these celebs are picking. But what I like best about PrizePicks is the peace of mind with things like this. Injury insurance, meaning your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. I'll give you an example. Let's say you got a guy who's out there on the court in the first half and gets hurt. He doesn't return for the second. Well, PrizePicks will have your back and not count that as a loss. I've had a lot of fun with this. I think you will too. They make it fast and easy. They've got quick withdrawals. They've got easy gameplay. They've got an enormous selection of players and stat types. And how about this? They've even got weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. They bonus you. They pad those stats and make it a little easier. They've even got Apple Pay to make it quick and easy to get started. I've had a lot of fun with this. I started doing it during the college basketball season, but boy, I'm having a lot of fun during the playoffs. I'm locked in today. Why don't you join me? Come have some fun. Download the app today and use the code 83 weeks and we'll get you a first deposit match of up to $100. That's right. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use our code 83 weeks and you'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Why wouldn't you do that? PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So let's talk a little bit about the budget. You know, our friend JR always says it's all about the cash and the creative. Well, now we know who the roster of celebrities are going to be. We kind of understand the format. We got 2 teams. We're getting down to the end. The 2 teams thing sounds a little bit like the Ultimate Fighter. I like it. We've got a budget from CMT for $750,000 per episode. That seems astounding. That's a home run. Is that high fives all around for BHE?
Yeah, that was a good number. You know, the business model for BHE at the time, and this part of it at least was standard in the industry, probably still is. Where as executive producers, and we had that title basically because this was our original concept, and we put the pieces together and we pitched it. So typically, a non-writing showrunner get 10% of the budget. So BHE would have gotten $75,000 an episode that Jason and I obviously would split. That's not where the money was. Money was in the physical production of the show. That's where the majority of that $750,000 went. The largest portion of it went to the actual production, shooting it, editing it, audio, all of the things that go into taking all that raw footage and turning it into an actual television show. That's where the money really is spent. Because Jason and I, and this is largely because Jason was really this was Jason's vision from the get-go, was to own our own equipment. We created a company called Westside Rentals. So we went out and bought the equipment. We didn't start out buying everything. We had to slowly, we'd sell a show. We'd go, okay, what's it going to take to produce this show? We may rent some of that equipment for that show, but then we would take the revenue from that show and buy that equipment. So we got to the point where we had a pretty significant warehouse full of cutting edge equipment to the extent that we needed it. You know, we weren't making feature films, right? We had pretty cutting edge equipment that we needed to have to deliver the types of shows that we want. But here's the sweet part. We would make a margin on that budget. So if we're making 10% off the top, say of $750,000, so we take that 10% of that, we take that $75,000, and then we're making about a 25 or 30% margin, sometimes more, sometimes less, but on average, about a 20, 25% margin markup, if you will, on the production side. So, you know, by the time we're done, we're looking at a sizable chunk of change. Jason and I got to split. So it was sweet, daddy. Sweet. But this was also one of the last big, when I say big budget, I mean for reality television at that time. $750,000 was on the edge of the budget for reality television. Obviously, Survivor was doing more, Great Race, or whatever it's called, was spending more. But there were very few reality shows that were in that $750,000 an episode bracket. A lot of them were, you know, 4, 5, 6. 750 was, especially for, you know, an outlet the size of CMT, pretty unique.
What do you think a fellow like Hulk Hogan would get paid for something like this when it's going to carry his name, image, and likeness? I mean, it's called Hulk Hogan Celebrity Championship Wrestling. Obviously, he's going to haul in more than everybody else. If you had to guess, what do you think that was worth to Hulkster?
100 and up.
Okay. He did pretty good.
Roll maybe time. Less. Maybe, yeah, I'd say between 75 and 100.
Yeah, not bad. When they're investing that kind of money, CMT is going to promote it. Do you recall there being any challenges negotiating with talent to get them on board? Just the financial piece. I'm not saying whether or not they would do it. I just mean, we're going to agree on a number here. Would you have handled that? Would Hervey have handled that or somebody else?
Depends on who the talent was. Some of it I did. A lot of it Jason did. A lot of it, probably the bulk of it, our agents did. You don't want to get, as a producer, you don't want to get into negotiating talent fees if you don't have to. I mean, yeah, they'll bring you to the dance if there's an issue. But if it's somebody that you go to, you're going to them as a friend or somebody that you want to be a friend, as an associate, you want to bring somebody in as a talent. I don't necessarily also want to be the same person that's negotiating their fee.
Right.
Rather somebody else do that. So the agents and usually the agent, we would have an attorney that would represent the project. So our attorney, in this case, it was Jason's brother, Scott Hervey, was an IP attorney in California. He also represented Bischoff Hervey Entertainment. So usually it was Scott Hervey that was handling that portion of it.
We should also mention that you mentioned the set was kind of dirty, dingy. Everybody was miserable. That's all done in Southeast LA. And you wrote that there was no air conditioning in the building and you're shooting in the summer. This had to make it even more miserable, especially for a big fellow like Butterbean. No,
it was horrible. I mean, no breeze. It just, again, the warehouse, I don't know how long it had sat empty, but there was like 6 inches of dust on the floor in the corners, and it was brutal. But that's what we wanted. We wanted it to have that gritty, almost Fight Club kind of vibe. We didn't want it to be pretty. No, we had a lounge area where sometimes, and we would use it. It was part of the set. We would use it to kind of create drama or whatever. But that was relatively clean and comfortable. But the rest of the place was just, you'd leave the set at night and go home and take a tetanus shot.
We should also mention that you wrote in your book, it ended up being a really great experience, not so much because it was a great television show or anything, but rather because of the talent themselves. They truly put a lot of talent or a lot of effort into what they did. Was there anyone in particular that you mentioned that the lady from Bewitched, she really crushed, but is there anybody who was like, oh man, this guy's just miserable. He does not want to be here and we don't want him here either. Does that exist in this crew?
No. It was the opposite. It got to the point early on where it's like, well, do we have to eliminate somebody? Can we change the format?
Okay.
Can we have a tie? Can we just do another season? How about I just don't want to eliminate this person because they're fucking good TV and I like them. It literally got to that number of times. So there was nobody that we were anxious to see leave. Quite the opposite. I think of the cast, the one person who I got the impression was most anxious was Frank Stallone. I don't know why. He was like, Aaron was anxious, but in a positive way. Stallone was anxious in a insecure way, maybe. Doubted himself, but was still wanted to really, really do it, but was anxious. It's the only word I can use was anxious. But a great guy. Loved to hear, a couple stories about growing up with Sly and his experiences, and it was fun to work with, but he was anxious.
We should mention what Dave Meltzer wrote about this show. Quote, the format of Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling TV show is that Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey are producing 2 teams of 5 celebrities. Each team will be coached by a well-known wrestler. The celebrities are getting $40,000 for the season, which will be a month of filming this summer. They'll do a tournament of matches. Each match will be judged by Hogan, Bischoff, and a third person Wow. Bischoff is finally doing that idea. In 2001, Bischoff and I had a few long discussions as he had the idea to make wrestling more real as an art form, and that you would have matches. And then when it's over, there'd be judges choosing the shoot winner or loser based on who performed the best. Time out. Explain yourself, Eric. You had a conversation with Dave Meltzer about wrestling with judges. I got to hear more about this because this is 2001. He's saying this happened, which would have been the same time that you were trying to take over WCW. And of course, WCW wound up being sold.
Here's how you know that's bullshit. Now, if Dave would have said back in 96 or whenever it was that I spent a little time trying to develop a relationship with Dave because Zane Breslov was a mutual friend and tried really hard to convince me that it would be a good idea. And I did. I tried for a short, very, very brief period of time. So if Dave would have said that I had that conversation back then, I'd have had to throw in the I don't know flag, could have happened flag. But not in 2001. Had I won't go so far as to say if I saw Dave on the street back then, I would have knocked him out. But I would have probably tried to provoke him to the point where I could justify knocking him. That's bullshit.
Hogan claimed, this is all from the Observer, they're trying to get David Arquette, Danny Bonaducci, and Kid Rock. Now we know that Danny Bonaducci is on the squad. Tell me about David Arquette and Kid Rock. Were they ever in consideration? Did y'all reach out or try to pull that off, or what happened?
Kid Rock is news to me. Although, his name might have been on a
list.
Hey, somewhere. What if list?
Yeah.
Especially because of CMT. So it's a possibility at least that somebody at least threw his name out, but it wasn't me that reached out. It wouldn't have been Jason. Neither one of us know Kid Rock personally, so we wouldn't have done it. It would have been through our agents if indeed there was any interest at all. I don't know.
Jimmy Hart, of course, is going to be the third judge of the matches because, well, of course he would be. And the story is that Rick Bassman and Tom Howard were the trainers, while Brian Knobbs and Brutus Beefcake were the coaches on TV. What was your experience like working with Bassman and Howard?
Really good. I think that was, I had known of Rick Bassman. I may had had a conversation or two with him on the phone prior to this project. So I didn't really know him. I knew of him. But working with him was really positive. He's a very positive guy. He's always thinking. He's a very creative, hardworking guy, and he's a hustler in a good way. I mean, likes to hustle, new ideas, projects, trying new things. So I liked him, and I enjoyed working.
You've said before, sort of tongue in cheek, that occasionally there was a Hulk tax. We got Brian Knobbs, we got Brutus Beefcake, we got Jimmy Hart. Are they part of the Hulk tax?
Well, certainly Beefcake was.
Yeah.
Brian, I was excited to work with because I knew for reality television, his character I'm surprised, really surprised that we didn't see a lot more of Brian in reality television because he was, especially when reality was hot, emerging for the first few years. You could put Brian in any environment and you're going to get drama. I mean, absolutely 100% of the time, you are going to get more drama than you know what to do with. So I was excited to work with Brian. Brutus, it was what it was. Jimmy, I probably wasn't as excited about working with Jimmy as I should have been. Jimmy can drive you crazy working with him. Can drive you fucking crazy. He's so high energy and he's constantly moving. It's like frenetic energy on steroids. And he gets a little irritable at certain things, about wrestling, or he gets super passionate about things. Baby, just let me, he's almost begging you to hear him, right? And for me back then, in WCW primarily, it would drive me batshit because it's like, get to the fucking point, Jimmy. If you got a point you want to make, get to it. I don't have all afternoon to listen to the backstory. Tell me. But that's not Jimmy's style. And Jimmy would always focus on what? The little details. And at the time, this is one of the things that I've learned the hard way, muckerfuthers. Listen up. So you don't have to learn the hard way. Crying out loud. You should have this figured out by now. But one of my mistakes and flaws, again, was get to the point. Paint the picture. Let me see if I can see it. If I can, great. If I can't, let's move on to the next picture. That was my approach to things. And I shut Jimmy down a lot because of that. Because my brain just couldn't absorb it any other way. But I have subsequently, as I have gotten wiser, looking back, realized how, as many times as I've said this on this show, television is nothing but little details together very, very well to create emotion. Jimmy was really good about the little details and things that Jimmy would say to me back in WCW that I would find to be, okay, we'll get to that. Now, little things that I've since brought up critiquing other people's shows. Jimmy used to go batshit. Like if a heel came to the ring wearing red, the babyface came to the ring wearing red, Jimmy would lose his shit. And you'd hear about it for like weeks, days. God forbid he'd be on the plane with us leaving Nitro, and I'd have to be on that plane flying back to Tampa or Atlanta where they were dropping me off. And I got Jimmy, baby. Oh, my God. So I would shut Jimmy down. I tried to do it politely. It wasn't like, shut the fuck up. Felt that way. Off that way. But I really have learned over the years that a lot of the things that Jimmy pointed out early on, had I paid more attention to some of the things Jimmy said, as obnoxious as he could be sometimes, I love you, Jimmy, but he was right more often than he was wrong. But I didn't learn that in WCW, not to the extent that I should have. But by this time, I kind of saw it differently, and I had more room in my head for Jimmy Hart and his opinions or his thoughts on something. Because sometimes it was, okay, Jimmy. Sometimes it was, Jimmy, good one. So I created more opportunity for the latter.
We would also see Bill Goldberg appear as a celebrity guest and Rob Van Dam. Is that you or Hogan making those calls to bring those folks in?
Both.
How was Bill?
Great. I mean, I'd like to say I always got along with Bill. That would be a lie. There was a period of time there when Bill was just soon step on me and squash me as look at me. And I would have liked to do the same thing. I just wasn't capable of it. there were times in our relationship, it all centered around money and contracts, and Bill wanting to renegotiate his contract early and asking for an exorbitant amount of money because his attorney and Hulk Hogan's attorney were the same attorney and he knew everything. So, but once we got through that part and got up again as friends and working peers, we got along just great. And Bill showed up. He did great. He was enthusiastic and supportive. Job.
Let's run through a little note from the Observer here. He's saying that you did an interview talking about and plugging the new television show. And you said, quote, Bischoff said he'd talked with people about starting a company, but always tells them He would need a guarantee he's got $100 million to work with, that it would take 5 to 5.5 years to be successful. He said he does want to find a way back in, but doesn't want to do it like TNA is doing it. And he hopes the Hogan TV show will launch new business ventures for them. I'm zeroing in on one thing in there, as you know, 100 million in 5 to 5.5 years. That's what you were saying when you were plugging this show in 2008. What do you think now in 2024?
I'd adjust that number for inflation. But other than that, yeah. And I think my point is not like I was fixated on $100 million because I sat down and did a budget and tried to figure out what it would actually cost. I threw the number out there because it was at the time. Well, certainly $100 million in 2008 is a big number, and it's still a big number. It's just a bigger number today compared to 2008. But I threw that number out there to just make a point that it's not cheap and it's not fast. Because I had been approached a number of times by people. Some of them had money or access to money. But when you don't understand the business of the wrestling business, even though you've been successful in other areas of one's life, one comes to the professional wrestling idea and goes, hey, what if I started my own? It's just guys in tights wrestling, not brain surgery. Simple. Not a lot of special effects. Let's do that. Problem is the business model, the business side of professional wrestling is far more complex than the business side of the television industry as a whole. Wrestling is a unique business and a unique business model. And then add in, the subculture that goes with it. So whenever I would be approached by someone, hey, would you be interested in starting a wrestling company? Sure. You got $100 million you can hand over and wait 5 years for a phone call? You bet. But if you think you're going to invest $5 million, you're going to be calling me 3 times a day, wondering when you're going to make your first dollar profit. Don't call me because it's not real. It's not how it works.
Well, we can't help but notice that we're right here at 5 years now for AEW. I just found that interesting. Bischoff says that while he has a lot of respect for the people that run WWE, that the product is as stale as can be. The thing is, if this show is a TV hit, and I'm not sure where it goes from here, obviously Hogan and Bischoff would like to run a wrestling promotion, but the ante to get it in doing professional wrestling and competing with WWE makes it cost prohibitive unless you have a TV partner with a lot of patience. Now, that narrative was out there forever, that you and Hulk were going to try to start your own promotion. Did you think this could have been a step in that direction, or is that all just rumor and innuendo from the internet?
It's all bullshit.
Okay.
All bullshit. Once the Fusion Media deal went away, that was the last time I've ever contemplated or entertained a serious conversation. I've had some unserious conversations. I've had discussions like, what would it take, or what would it be like, or what would you do? And I'm talking about general conversations. Nothing, any kind of a serious business tone to it whatsoever. I've had those conversations. But once the Fusion deal went away, I had never had a serious conversation with anybody. Now, there was a point in time when, who was he at Fox? He was a sports executive at Fox for a long time. He's Australian. I can't remember his name right now. But he wanted to have a meeting with Hulk, and because I was handling a lot of Hulk's business at the time, I ended up taking that meeting with Hulk. I'll think this individual's name shows over how, but
was it Adam Howarth?
Nope.
Okay.
It was a bigger name than that. He was probably in his 60s when I met him back then. David Hill.
Okay.
David Hill. Took meetings like that, but they were meetings that we attended by invitation. They weren't meetings like Hulk and I said, hey, what if we go pitch David Hill the idea of starting a wrestling company? That never happened, ever. But we would take meetings of somebody, especially somebody with credibility like a David Hill, call and say, hey, I want to talk about launching a wrestling company. Sure. Fly us out, hang out, eat some sushi. talk some business. It's real. We'll have another meeting. If not, we've had some great sushi.
Let's talk a little bit about a story that happened. I can't believe this is real, but here's the write-up from the Observer. A funny story regarding the taping. Ziering is pregnant and is rumored she got pregnant while filming the show. When Bischoff was talking with Bubba the Love Sponge, he made a joke that maybe the kid was Brutus Beefcakes. Although apparently it wasn't a secret, the two had been together during filming. So Bubba then called Ed Leslie, told him Ziering was pregnant, and TMZ was reporting that he was the father. They're not reporting that. Bubba made it up. Leslie was eating dinner with his family when called, and then responded that he was with her a lot during filming. He said she kept coming to his trailer and, quote, "What was I supposed to do?" Said it is possible he was the father, but that, quote, "I wasn't the only dog in the pen." He claimed all the guys there, except Brian Knobs, were having fun with her. My goodness, Eric, what the fuck is this shit?
What?
Is this just a nice way to plug reality TV and sex sells and all that jazz?
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. It just feels weird. Hey,
sounds like a work to me.
Roll Tide. There you go. The show comes on.
First, if you just look at the facts, like a lot of times when you read shit on the internet or you read shit in Dave Meltzer's shit stained sheet, just ask yourself, well, wait a minute. Does this really make any sense?
None.
Do you think Brutus the Barber Beefcake makes any sense at all? Do you think that could possibly happen in real life?
Maybe with alcohol. Okay. Well, the show debuts October 18th, 2008. Meltzer would describe it as a cross between Tough Enough, Ultimate Fighter, Hogan Knows Best, and Surreal Life. You've got a judging panel trying to be witty when critiquing the contestants. So maybe it's got a little bit of Dancing with the Stars in there as well. Were you happy with the first episode and the way it looked and felt when it aired, Eric? Were you pleased?
Mildly pleased. I wasn't like super excited about it. The judging aspect, which is really one of the most important elements in that format, it was a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Talking about that element where we were trying to, make it interesting and have fun and be compelling. None of us were really that good at it. So it was just okay.
The ratings were just okay too. It did a 0.4 in its key primetime ratings. There's 2 other airings of this first episode. The first rerun does a 0.3. The second run does a 0.2. The primetime rating though is usually 0.2 on this network. So to come out at a 0.4, although if you're listening, you think, well, that doesn't sound very good. It's double what they were normally doing. Were you disappointed or happy with the number? Was the network disappointing or happy with the number?
Network was pretty happy with the number, but keep in mind, this show was a lot more expensive than a lot of the other types of programming that CMT would run at this time. So yeah, we doubled their average primetime audience. We doubled it 200% or whatever. Hell of a headline. But because the cost of the show was more,
right?
They typically budget, and the ad sales didn't adjust up with the cost of the show, it wasn't the financial success that the ratings would indicate.
Here's something else that maybe was a Hogan tax, because I know how you feel in real life. Bubba the Love Sponge did commentary on these shows, and Meltzer said the most surprising thing on the show was the commentary by Bubba. He had a different style of commentary that probably made anyone who has ever been a pro wrestler or worked in the industry cringe. In a sense, it was the most honest commentary when it comes to what wrestlers are trying to do in the ring. He'd use inside terms, talking about the heels selling and putting over the babyface to make them shine in spots, ring positioning, working the crowd, and using the words babyface and heel to describe the roles played. Obviously, we're going way inside here. This is by design, I'm sure. Were you hesitant to have commentary that used all those terms, or was that sort of the reality of the show and it's just what we're doing? And how did Bubba get the gig? Is that the Hulk tax?
Yeah, well, it was not so much. I mean, because Bubba brought, what does Brutus the fucking Barber beefcake bring to anything other than sucking up valuable oxygen. It doesn't really contribute much, right? Bubba, and you can say what this is someone that I would avoid like plague on a personal level, but professionally, a great voice, knows how to use radio, and he's a passionate wrestling fan. He's got a fucking massive radio footprint to help promote the show.
Yes.
So when you've got something to bring and contribute to the equation, yeah, you put up with however he got there. He's adding value. And Bubba, despite the fact that he's a human, just piece of shit, added value. To the terms, I don't like it. It's interesting though that Dave Meltzer is a smart mark complaining about smart marks. I love it. Using inside terminology. Great. Irony is fun. But I never liked that. Again, it's easy because it becomes interesting to somebody that's never heard it before. It's because it's like, well, what the fuck are they talking about? You lean into it. What does that mean? Well, never heard that term. So it'll attract attention, and I understand that. But too much, a little bit of that is fine. Too much of that is like David Copperfield taking me backstage and showing me how he does the trick before he does the trick.
Right.
I don't want to see that. I just want to see the trick. Show me how it's done. Tell me how it's done. Show me the trick. Live in my little fantasy world. Escape. Let me think I'm really seeing magic. Fuck with my imagination. Just let me have it. Tell me how.
The wrestling matches, according to Dave Meltzer, which should be the climax like an Ultimate Fighter where the show builds to matches, at least in week 1, was the worst part of the show. The show that follows, a reality show about redneck weddings, is considered a hit on the station. So far, with more pub and the Hogan name, no reason this won't be. The clips for upcoming episodes weren't too bad, but it did come across as low rent, which is the kiss of death for a project involving Hogan.
Dave knows so much. Like the wrestling is supposed to be the best part. He wanted a 5-star fucking match with Aaron Murphy and Todd Bridges. You were such a fucking goof, Meltzer, and you exposed yourself back then. You're exposing yourself today, and I am so here for it because my timeline is filled up with people that are calling your shit. And my only other hope is they're canceling their subscriptions to your shit show of a dirt sheet. But in the meantime, over and over again, this guy keeps exposing himself.
Week 2 of the show did a 0.3. Week 3 did a 0.25. Week 2 did a 0.2, and it grew in week 5 to a 0.4. Along the way, something interesting happens though. Quote, Vince McMahon is on the warpath against Hogan, Bischoff, and Hervey because he saw an episode of Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling, went nuts on a recent flight, and ordered Laurinaitis to tell everyone involved that they are not only no longer welcome in WWE, but he doesn't want them coming to shows or talking with his wrestlers. Seriously. Apparently many in the company are not happy with Celebrity Championship Wrestling, thinking it exposes the business. Can you imagine anyone even thinking that way in 2008, let alone Vince McMahon? I mean,
first of all, we don't know that it's true. That's what Dave wrote. Doesn't mean it was true.
We can find out if it's true. Did Johnny Ace or Vince or anybody call you and tell you you're no longer welcome in WWE? Don't talk to our people.
Absolutely not. Shortly after this, I entered into a licensing agreement for an energy drink for WWE, and I subsequently got it distributed in Walmart stores nationwide. So no, we were good. Here, if there was any issue at all with WWE, despite what Dave Meltzer made up in his own fucking twisted mind, was that we wanted to use Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Yeah, the name.
WWE sent us a cease and desist. I mean, they owned the rights to Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Scott Hervey, Jason's older brother, who's a very successful IP entertainment attorney in Los Angeles, said, sorry, Jerry, as in McDivitt, fuck you. You don't have the rights. And we were right. And we used Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So if there was any heat, it might have been from that, because we stood up to a cease and desist, and they didn't like the fact that we were right and they were wrong. We were able to do what we wanted to do anyway. They didn't like that, but I never got a phone call saying don't show up. And in fact, as I pointed out, engaged in business with them subsequently.
As you said, Jerry McDevitt sent Ed Leslie a cease and desist, a legal letter on October 27th saying, hey, you can't use the name Brutus the Barber Beefcake. We own that IP. And of course, your show attorneys would argue, well, you haven't used that name on television since 93, and a requirement for a trademark to stay active is acting in it in commerce. And of course, they never said or used Brutus the Barber Beefcake since 93. So you guys got it. How about that?
Yeah. And not only did I bitch slap Vince McMahon and WWE for 83 weeks straight, over 104 episodes in combination, that was hard enough as it was. But to bitch slap Jerry McDevitt in court over a trademark issue, that was something they were not used to. They did not like that. I'm making that part up. I don't know.
It's written here. Eric Bischoff wrote that Laurinaitis called Knobs and told him to not get near any WWE talent and not come to any events. Bischoff.
Yeah, but a lot of people say that to Knobs. That doesn't mean anything.
Bischoff says in his own smarmy way, if I were Vince, I wouldn't want 5+ million wrestling fans watching a fresh concept and entertaining product either, especially with the product he's currently producing. Actually, Vince probably wouldn't want 5+ million wrestling fans watching an entertaining product. But where are they going to find such a product? I have no idea what that has to do with Hulk Hogan's championship wrestling. So
see, now there's a let's talk about different situation. I am ripping on WWE. I'm shitting all over their product. Calling it out. Boring. Stale. Guess what? Because it was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was able to do business with Vince McMahon and WWE. Not only in an outside licensing project for an energy drink that we got distributed in Walmart called Raw Energy. Great brand, by the way. Not only was I able to achieve that, I subsequently went to work, did TV for him from time to time, ended up getting hired as executive director for about 4 months. I don't know. It's just a difference. Some people can take criticism. Other people just crumble.
The next to last show did a 0.3 at 2 p.m., a 0.3 at 8 p.m., and a 0.2 at 1 a.m. And the final episode, with a ton of publicity, does the exact same. 0.3 at 2 o'clock, 0.3 at 8 o'clock, 0.2 at 10:30 p.m. This is a Saturday show, so we're getting 3 runs out of it. And it ends the first season on December 6th with Dennis Rodman being crowned champion, even though most, including Hulk Hogan in media interviews afterwards, said he thought Todd Bridges was probably the best wrestler in the cast. And the show has signed deals with several foreign countries, and the first season in Canada will start on Much Music just 8 days later on December 14th. It's going to start in the UK on Bravo in January. So listen, this thing had some legs. Was there ever a discussion about a second season? And do you agree with Hogan that maybe Todd Bridges was the best wrestler?
I think in some ways Todd was. I still think Dennis, because of his overall presentation, his character, his personality, his promo. I would have gone with Dennis again. Another little interesting tidbit. This is one of the first shows, probably one of the only shows, that we were able to negotiate international distribution rights for. That never happens in Hollywood when you're dealing with established, unless you're a Mark Burnett or, a Tom Beers or somebody, Craig Pelagian. Sure, there are others, but those were the big names back then that, because of who they were and their magnitude, they could negotiate either a piece or, in some cases, foreign distribution rights. This one, BHE was able to negotiate foreign distribution rights on. So that was sweet too.
Overall, were you happy with the final product? Did you learn anything doing this show?
I wasn't unhappy with it. It was transactional. I was proud of the business. Happy with the money that we made. I made a fortune off the show. Happy with all of that. Happy with the experience because you know every show you do, you learn something. I mean, if you don't, you shouldn't be doing it. But yeah, I'd learn a lot. Every one of these shows, you learn something, sometimes a little thing, sometimes a big thing. Sometimes you try a technique to get a certain emotion out of a scene that I hadn't tried before, you know, because my experience up to that point was directing wrestling talent, primarily in interviews and, you know, backstage stuff. I didn't get involved in laying out a match. It was my skill set ever. I didn't try to pretend it was. I would leave that to other people. But the backstage stuff, you know, getting somebody's character over, helping them through an interview, trying to elicit an emotion that I'm not seeing when I need one from talent with a microphone in the hand. I was really good at that and still am, quite honestly. Having been a talent as well as being a producer, kind of learn how to speak both languages at the same time. But I still learned a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing different projects, whether it's different television shows or any new business. It's the entrepreneur in me that draws me to a new opportunity, not so much because I'm convinced the opportunity is going to be a success, but in the process of exploring that idea, learn some shit. Especially if you're actually doing it, you're not just reading about it. It's not theoretical. Dig in, try it, figure it out in real time. I love that. And that's one of the things, each one of these different shows that we produced, each one of them was unique in its own way. And you have to try different things and learn different process.
If you could have done a second season, even if you were doing it current, like modern times, is there a celebrity out there you think would be perfect for this format?
Oh, not that I can think of off the top of my head, but if I sat down and thought about it for 45 minutes or an hour, I could probably come up with it. I don't look, I just don't think the idea would work today, obviously. But the timing was right then. You know, the evolution of reality television and the introduction of celeb reality still kind of on the cusp, still in a growth phase. So the timing was right. I think if you tried to do this now, people would shit all over it.
What was the highlight and what was the low light to you? Don't say the cash.
The highlight was every night when we wrap. It was typically late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock. And once the crew and the cast and everybody split, Jason and I would kind of sit out in a parking lot. One of us would have a cooler in the trunk.
There you go.
Have a beer and just talk through the day. Remember those scenes? I can't remember. There was a couple different shows where there's a lawyer show that was really good. Where at the end of every episode, these two lawyers would go out on a balcony and have a scotch and a cigar and recap the day.
Yeah.
Or in this case, the episode. It's kind of what we did. And it was pretty cool. Because the days were hard. They were long. They were hot, sweaty, filthy, dust all day, dealing with the issues that you have to deal with when you're working with human beings who have pride and ego and emotion. And you're asking them to do really uncomfortable things in an uncomfortable way. But by 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, once it started cooling off in LA back in June or July or whenever it was, I cold beer with my buddy Jason. It's pretty fun.
I can't imagine shooting this show without air conditioning in the summer in LA. It had to be hot as balls. It had to be pretty smelly. I can only wish that you guys had a Mando sponsor back then. You know what the most valuable thing in the world is? 5-star matches. No, really. It's the second most valuable thing is time. Managing and worrying about body odor used to take up time. If you're paranoid about smelling, especially around midday or at the end of the day, it can become extremely time consuming, but not anymore. I switched to Mando whole body deodorant, and I got to tell you, my wife and I have never looked back. My wife has stolen this from me. I had to go reorder. She's such a big believer in this because it really does last not only all day, it's clinically proven to control odor for up to 72 hours. That's a long time. It's unbelievable. I mean, you could put this deodorant on and then binge watch the entire season of Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling. And then when you got done with that, you could watch all the 8 hours of wrestling that Eric needed to know who Tama Tonga was. And you still wouldn't stink as long as you're using Mando. You see, Mando doesn't cover up odor after the fact with heavy fragrances, like those other deodorants. Instead, Mando stops the odor at the source. It blocks the bacteria on your skin, and it's going to eat your sweat. That's the natural cause of the BO. And that's why Mando is going to be hooking you up for 72 hours. That's a long time. So give yourself the precious gift of time and get yourself some Mando whole body deodorant. New customers can get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. And by the way, this isn't just for your armpits. This is for your whole body. Let me catch you up here. I'm talking about your nutsack, boys. I'm talking about your asshole. I'm talking about your belly button. Maybe you got some stomach folds. Maybe you're like Dave Silva and you got the stinkiest damn feet you ever ran across. Mando can help. It was created by a doctor, Lord bless him, who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And now Mando's whole body deodorant, man, it's powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but gentle enough to use anywhere and everywhere. You don't have to worry about Mando. It's aluminum free. It's baking soda free. It's cruelty free. It's dye free. It's vegan. And it's clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. How about this? 12 hours after a shower, the average man grundle odor is a 5 out of 10. Dave Silva's case, it's an 11 out of 10. But with Mando, the average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. That's what you want. You want a 0 odor in your downstairs. I don't know what makes them do the things they want to do, but I know what makes them not want to. And that's getting up there to that 10 out of 10. Don't do that. Keep your grundle odor in check with Mando. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and you get free shipping. Now, luckily, we've got a discount code to get you hooked up on your favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack. Go right now, use the code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com, shopmando.com, and use our code 83weeks. Eric, what's your grundle odor right now? Where you at, grundle wise?
I'm probably at a 2 or 3 because I use my Mando product regularly, and it's really good for about 2 days for me. I can go 2 days without worrying about anything. Stuff is amazing, quite honestly. I was shocked. I first heard about it I saw a television commercial. It's for a different product, but by the same company. And the lady that invented it, the doctor that invented it, was talking about it. She goes, it's good for your hair, it's good for your hair, under boob, butt crack. And I'm going, she must know Conrad. She just, no shame whatsoever.
Yes.
She's talking about her smelly tits and her ass crack. No problem on national television. Her and Conrad will get along great.
And you'll get along great with her too, because you won't be stinking. Get rid of that stinky grundle. 83 weeks is our code. It's going to hook you up. Shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO. Shopmando.com. Let's do some questions. We got a ton of great questions here. We even got some from our live studio audience. We'll hit a few here. This one comes to us from Coach Rosie. He wants to know, how many times did Hulk say, "That's not going to work for me, brother," during the production of Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling?
That never happened. Hulk was, in terms of creatively, super, super, super easy to work with on his show. I will say though, he had some intense physical challenges that made producing the show actually quite difficult. Now, we typically would shoot all of our, our training stuff, our promos, our interviews. We do all that stuff during the day. Then we take a break, usually about 5:00. And then by 7, we start loading the audience in, and we'd shoot our matches at night. So, it was a brutal full day. Now, Hulk wouldn't necessarily be there during the course of the day. He wouldn't show up till about 5 or 6. And then, we would prep him to matches, and then we'd do his pickup shots and everything else at a later date. there was more than one occasion where I'd head over to the hotel to pick Hulk up. He was staying over at the Plaza in Century City. I'd go over to get him, and there was more than one time where I had to go get into his room and help him get out of bed. And one time I had to take him to the hospital before I could take him to the set.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad he was. Yeah.
My goodness. Let's do a few more questions here from our live audience. Appreciate you guys joining us from adfreeshows.com. Shout out to Bobby, who's got a question here. This is a fun one. It's off topic, but a great question. If WCW would have won and put WWE out of business, what do you think Turner would have done with Titan Towers?
Sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that going to be weird when they sell that, you think? I mean, I know they've moved into a new office. I think they've still got the old one. My understanding is originally they were going to rent it out, but it does feel like there's no, if TKO is really trying to move past the Vince McMahon era, TKO is not really by and large in the real estate business. I know they have some holdings, but it feels like they're going to unask that at some point. That'll be like the real end of an era to me. Not only is Vince gone, but there's no more Titan Towers, like at all. That's going to be different.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, right? You know, and I only spent, like I said, 4 months there. All the time I was a talent, I had never gone to Titan Towers. So I never laid foot there inside of that office building until, well, I take that back. When I did the licensing deal, I actually took meetings there for the energy drink. But I was really unfamiliar with that facility for the most part until I went there in 2019. But even now, as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing another episode on Tuesday night with Brad.
Tomorrow night, as folks are listening to this. Tomorrow night,
yeah. And we're going to be talking about Hulk Hogan and WWE and the Six Pack, the book that he wrote that we're breaking down over on YouTube. He talks about, you know, the original office building and showed us a picture of that. And there's so much nostalgia and history. I guess for me, the history that's taken place within those walls. You know, just imagine if walls within WWE could talk, the stories that they could tell. I'm not talking about, let's not even negative at all, but just think about the ideas that were exchanged and the
Hogan, Andre, all that.
And those walls could talk. It would be an amazing conversation.
Here's another question, a great one too, from Denovius Mac. Of course, over the weekend, TNA had their Rebellion pay-per-view, and we got a surprise. Matt Hardy is back in TNA. He probably did his most notable work of his singles career, at least in recent memory. There, I don't know, gosh, what was it now? 8-9 years ago? It was fantastic. The whole broken Matt Hardy stuff at the time was pretty innovative. And Denovius says, do you think Matt Hardy will end his career in TNA or wait until Jeff's contract is up and then return to WWE to retire there? I think it was smart of him to return back to TNA right now. Hard to argue. You know, he's sort of been middle of the pack, at best, maybe at times in his positioning in AEW, but he was a tippy type guy in TNA and that character was really, really over. What do you expect from Matt Hardy? I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, to think if Jeff's contract is up one day, if they do a retirement match, or I don't know that they're going to go back to WWE full time, long term, but building towards their last match, that probably makes sense that should happen in WWE. What say you?
I mean, I would like to see it, right? That's a happy ending to an amazing journey and story, and two guys who, you know, have contributed a lot and made so many memorable moments. So the part of me that wants everything to be unicorns and sunshine and rainbows and all that, I'd love to see that. Do I think it'll happen? I think there's a low probability. Do I see WWE or anybody else taking a chance on Jeff, given track record? And I'm a big supporter of Jeff, and I love Jeff, love his work. It is what it is, folks. And I think at some point in time, it's fair to say the wrestling industry and the demands of it probably aren't consistent with what Jeff needs in his life. And he's done so much and accomplished so much. I'm sure he's accumulated enough wealth to do smart things and good things and healthy. And I don't think Jeff Hardy going back to wrestling would be any of those. Now, a one-off match.
He's wrestling right now. He's under contract with AEW.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about
full time.
Talking about going back to WWE.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea for Jeff to be working at AEW. Now it's a little easier because they're not on the road, other than television production, I should say. It's not a taping, at least for Dynamite. I think Jeff would be better off away from it. It's going to be hard because everybody that I've known to one degree or another has a very hard time forcing themselves in business. It becomes a part of who you are, it becomes a part of your DNA. When wrestlers say sometimes too often, oh, it's in my blood. For some wrestlers, that's absolutely true in their minds. It's in their DNA. It's part of who they are. And giving it up or walking away from it is like walking away from yourself. Some people can handle it. Some people look forward to it. Some people have a very difficult time with it and it's never really truly adjust. I think perhaps Jeff is in the latter category. Don't know. Could be wrong. Hope I am. Spend some time with your kids, your wife. Appreciate what you've got. Be grateful for what you've got. Be grateful you can still walk. All the crazy stuff you put yourself through, both recreationally and in the ring professionally. Be grateful for the health that you have and just look back and smile. That'd be my advice.
We're going to do a few more questions that we got from social media and whatnot. And then we're going to touch on some AEW stuff that may or may not have spoilers. So for our live studio audience, I'll give you a heads up when we're getting there, but you're getting close to wanting to tag out, but hang in there for now. For everybody else, we should do a few of these questions here. Slovakia 99 wants to know, did you enjoy your role as Simon Cowell on this show?
It was okay. It probably suited my personality more than being, a cheerleader. It was a little easier in that regard. But as I said earlier, I don't think any of us were really that particularly good at it. So I was a little bit let down by all of us, including myself.
J.M. Wagner wants to know, did Danny Bonaducci and Screech go into business for themselves with their fight, or was it all part of reality TV?
I was a little bit of both. It was a little bit of both. The direction from probably Jason on that one was a wink and a nod. Like, you guys get into a conflict.
Yeah.
Not saying, we don't want anybody to get hurt, because we have insurance here. We've got standards. See that guy over there? He works for standards and practices. See that lady over there? She works for the insurance company. She watches you eat to make sure it's safe. So keep in mind that if anything's going to happen, it's going to have to happen away from those two individuals. Or if anything should happen, the only way we're not going to get in trouble is if that person doesn't see it. That kind of shit.
What percentage would you say of reality television or this particular show was real versus quote unquote reality TV? Like, we all understand what reality TV is. We're wrestling fans, but where is the line of, because there's always been this debate. At first, of course, everybody took everything at face value. And then eventually people said, oh no, it's all scripted. It's all bullshit. Was there a mix, or is it all sort of wrestling?
Well, it was 100% contrived, meaning it's not a documentary. These things are not going to be happening anyway, even if our cameras weren't here. So in that sense, it is 100% contrived. But in our case, I would say the emotion and the reactions and the drama that our contrived environment created was probably 60-40, 60% natural, real, authentic, 40% because everybody knew what the game was and what we did.
Yeah.
But it was probably that balance most of the time.
Victor Redmond wants to know, from Eric's point of view, is there any way, concept, or format today that would conceivably draw a mainstream non-wrestling audience to a wrestling related product like Celebrity Championship Wrestling? What would that take?
I don't think so. When you say mainstream, now there's very few mainstream audiences anymore. What's mainstream? I mean, look at the programming, take the networks out of it, CNBC, CBS, take them out of it. Look at your cable offerings. Look at primarily your cable offerings. Everything is a niche. Is a niche of a niche. It's hard to find an opportunity for a mainstream show if you're not a Yellowstone, something of that magnitude that's going to get mainstream attention immediately. Otherwise, everything starts off small, and if it's a hit, gets a little viral and grows. But I can't think of a format today that would come close to the viewership of live action wrestling. Live action is always going to draw. Because live action, you have the drama, you have the visual, dynamic excitement of the athleticism, you have the spectacle, you have the story and the characters. So you have all the elements of what makes up great entertainment, whether it's at a movie theater, on a television screen, or in Broadway. You have the elements. You have story, you have character, you have drama, which creates emotion. It would be hard to do that in any other wrestling-related format and come close to what the actual action.
Let's do another question here from the Funk. He wants to know who owns this property, whatever is left of it today. I'm not sure if he's talking about the set, the building, or the actual content, the episodes themselves. Do you have answers for either?
Sure. The show is owned. The masters, if you will, of the show are owned by Viacom. The rest of it, other than the furniture that we rented for the lounge area of our set, I would imagine it was returned to the dumpster we got it from.
Dylan Leahy wants to know, was there ever a discussion to get Karl Malone on the show, considering you already had a relationship with him?
No. I mean, the cast came together pretty easily and pretty quickly. So there was no, hey, what ifs that I can remember. Certainly Karl wouldn't have
been. Tristan wants to know, the C and D list celebrity reality TV shows started off really hot, but they've kind of gone away in favor of reality shows with everyday people like 90 Day Fiance, Love After Lockdown, etc. Why do you think that is, Aaron?
It's just it's like music and fashion, and kind of like I said in the very beginning, when celebrity first became a thing, it was really fascinating to see these stars, these people only otherwise saw in movies and television series, all of a sudden being thrust into an everyday life situation that the viewer perhaps would face every day, something similar to that. That became very interesting until. And this is Hollywood. This is so fucking Hollywood. It's one of the reasons why, Jason and I decided neither one of us were cut out for it any longer, is when you meet with executives, not so much agents, because they become a victim of the process too, but you meet with these executives, most of whom don't have a fucking clue what and they're in horrible jobs. They're in horrible jobs. The lifespan of a network programming executive is probably about the same as an insect of some sort. You may get a season or two, and then it's musical chairs. So it's a tough job. But you get these people that are like, oh, what I'd really like to see, and if we did this, and we could do that, and I think this would work. You get these network executives with these grandiose ideas, but when it comes time to making a decision, they can't. It's very difficult for them because their jobs are insecure, and because it's and everything is a committee. Before you pitch a show, up to the senior executive, it's got to go through the ad sales division. And all the ad sales people are going to tell you all the reasons why they don't want the responsibility to sell the show, because they don't want to fail at anything. It's just such a negative environment. I'm not sure why I went off in this direction. What was the question?
We were talking about celebrities versus real people in reality shows. And
so it's just like anything else. Network executives have the least amount of imagination of most people that I've ever talked to, even though they're network executives. So what they tend to do is jump on what's ever hot. So somebody comes up with an idea. I got an idea. Let's put I know we've been using real people now ever since the real world came along, but what if celebrities? Oh, I don't know, man, that's not what works. Nobody's done that. And oh my God, do you really want to pitch that? Really want to take responsibility for this? Maybe not. Yeah, let's not do that. Let's do something else. Until eventually somebody goes, okay, let's just try a celebrity because all this real people shit isn't working anymore. Numbers are going down and down and down. There's 75 new reality shows with real people coming out next month. So let's try the celebrity thing.
It's cyclical.
And then you try the celebrity thing and it works. Guess what happens next week?
Every
fucking cable outlet and studio and agency in the world is taking celebrity meetings until it's not hot anymore. And then they go back to what worked before, real people situations. Now, I think in fairness, what I'm seeing now, and I don't spend a lot of time watching non-scripted, with the exception of documentaries. And what I'm seeing a lot more of now are docudramas. What's a docudrama? I'll give you an example. Tom Beers, the fishing show out on the ocean with the tuna boats and crab boats and all that. That's real. That's a docudrama. That's the drama that you capture in the process of documenting a dangerous situation.
Deadliest Catch, is that what you're talking about?
Deadliest Catch. That is a great example of a docudrama. Real people, real situation. Yes, that still works. But it's probably not a good idea to use this example, but it's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Kardashians.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bunch of self-made celebrities. None of them were anything in the beginning. And because they were at the time, they were real people with a patina. They were the Kardashians. Robert Kardashian was the patriarch of the family. He had some notoriety, but for the most part, other than a sex tape that Kim Kardashian did with some rapper, they were off the radar until the reality show came along. They were real people in this unique situation, and they became huge stars, financially successful. But for the most part, the real people thing, in the beginning at least, just played itself out. And I hopefully it's coming back because real people are, in a lot of ways, if it's a docudrama especially, or the other category sounds like the same thing, but it's not, is a doc follow. So it's shot documentary style, but you're following somebody through what is typically referred to as a process format. Pawn Stars. It's a process format. It's real people, but it's not a documentary necessarily, but you're following the owners of this pawn shop as you see the process, which is the essence of the show, the process of people bringing in unique things and having a valuation put on them, and then finding out if it's true or not. That's a format. It's a process format.
Next week, Eric, we'll be talking about who belongs in the WCW Hall of Fame. Of course, I guess it technically no longer exists, but it did once upon a time. And I'm curious who Eric thinks would make a good candidate for the WCW Hall of Fame. And we really want to hear from you. So head on over right now to 83weeks.com and comment on our community page who you would put in the WCW Hall of Fame and see if it matches Eric here. Now's the time we're going to go ahead and tell everybody who's watching along with us live here. We're going to be talking potential spoilers, so see you next week. But for everybody else who's listening to this on Monday, Eric, Dynasty, as you and I are recording, is tonight. So as folks are listening to this, it was last night. This, as you see on the poster here, the graphic that Silva has posted at 83weeks.com, Samoa Joe prominently front and center. Not featured on the graphic at all. Swerve Strickland, his challenger. Swerve is the betting favorite. Every insider I know says Swerve is winning the title tonight. And I couldn't help but wonder what Eric thought about that. Because you and I have spent a little time talking about how timing is everything in comedy in sales, in real estate, in business, in life, in relationships. Timing is everything. And you sort of pair it a lot of times on here and just beat the drum. You got to have discipline in storytelling. You got to have patience. And you sort of indicated at the top of the show, you felt like WWE had demonstrated a lot of that. And perhaps AEW was hot shotting things. You didn't say those words, but maybe they didn't have the same patience that WWE does. I would actually argue that if anything, they waited too long to pull the trigger on Swerve. I'm a huge Swerve Strickland fan. I've been on the Swerve train for over a year now and telling everybody how much I appreciate and enjoy his work on my social media accounts. But it feels like they've cooled him off a little bit. Now I think they're still going to go forward with it as we're recording, and he's going to win the title tonight. And I think he should have won it a couple pay-per-views ago, maybe, because it feels like that if there is a negative pattern in AEW, the one I can point to is we get guys hot and then it feels like we accidentally, inadvertently cool them off. Wardlow comes to mind. The Acclaim come to mind. Like these were, the fans could not get enough. I'm talking thunderous pops, huge reactions, and they're all still signed. They're all still there, but it just doesn't feel the same. And I kind of feel the same way about Swerve Strickland. And I know that we had a ton of discipline in the Cody Rhodes story. And when he didn't win at last year's WrestleMania, a lot of people were saying, oh, they missed it. They've killed Cody. It's over. They had patience. He fixed it. They did it. I'm curious. Do you think that same thing can happen for Swerve Strickland? Or do you think they just didn't pull the trigger on him at the right time? And now it's going to be an uphill battle. I want Swerve to be hugely successful. This will be his first major title. Yes, he had success in NXT. Yes, he had success in MLW. This is a different deal, but I just think, man, the time to do that was maybe a couple of months ago. What say you?
I haven't been following Swerve Strickland closely enough to have valid opinion, other than to say that if you look at AEW and you look at their track record, you look at the pattern, you look at history, I don't think Swerve Strickland is going to reach his potential in AEW. Just not. It's not that they don't have discipline in their storylines. It's that they don't really have any storylines. They really don't. They have excuses for matches. That's not the same thing. And I think perhaps he has the talent, but if there's one person that anybody that can point to in AEW that had potential, that was involved in a storyline that went for 3 or 4 months and built and built and built and then paid off, I'd like to know who that person was. And I'm not saying there wasn't. I just like to know who it was. I haven't seen anything to suggest that there's anything that remotely could be described as a creative plan. I think it's spontaneous creative. I think it's whatever Tony's in the mood for in any given moment.
I just think storyline wise, and I know you haven't been keeping up with it, but I have more probably than you have. And it felt like they should have pulled the trigger on Swerve at Revolution. And maybe they didn't because they wanted to make it all about Sting's night and they didn't want to have a title switch happen in the middle of the show. I'm not sure, but they're faced with a similar circumstance tonight. Like is Ospreay and Danielson going to close, or will it be Joe and Swerve? I'm a huge Swerve fan. I think Joe has been phenomenal in his role as world champion. He's checked every box and been everything you wanted Samoa Joe to be. I just think I want Swerve Strickland to become a made man here in AEW and be the torchbearer, but it does feel like the timing was off.
And Conrad, they didn't even think enough of him, or there's not even enough of a plan or detail in that plan to include him on the cover shot that we just talked about.
And that's
not even on the freaking poster.
That to me is egregious. I'm just like, how is he supposed to be the top guy? And listen, I understand.
He's not even there.
And I understand we're showing our champions here, Eric. That's what we're showing is our champions. I get that, but still it's just like, golly, if we're going to make him, we got to make him. And I think the world of the real life guy behind Wardlow. I think he's a great guy. Always been awesome at our StarCast events, things like that. Great with fans. If you have a chance to meet him, go out of your way. But once upon a time, instead of putting him with the TNT belt, they could have put the big belt on him. He was over like Rover, destroying MJF. and we didn't pull the trigger, and that feels like we missed our opportunity. And I really didn't want you to answer specifically about Swerve, but more about the delicate balancing act of understanding that timing is everything and you don't get a second chance to make a first impression sometimes, but also having discipline and storytelling. Because the overreaction to this would be, as soon as someone gets hot, let's push them to the moon and make them the top guy. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I am saying, where's the balancing act, Eric, of, hey, if we don't do it now, we're hurting him long term and we're hurting us on our upside long term. How do you balance that with, we've got to be disciplined in our storytelling, and just because they want it now, we can't give it to them now. How do you balance that, Eric?
It's not hard. First of all, and it starts with a premise that every story should have a plan. There should be an arc. There should be points along the way throughout the story, from the inciting incident, which is, we're in film school 101. You would talk, how does a story start? What happens? Something happens in every movie, in every book, in every television show, particularly dramas. Something happens at the very beginning that allows the story to unfold. On from there. And then there are elements along the way through Act 1, first 33 to 3%, if you will, that can vary.
Pull your mic a little closer, Eric.
For the purposes of this discussion, your Act 1 is about a third of your story. You're developing, you're exposing the character, you're letting the audience understand the character's traits, you're creating situations where the audience will begin to identify as a protagonist or an antagonist, babyface or heel, with that character, and you're watching this journey until boom, something happens that thrusts your central character into an entirely different reality and now is being faced with a challenge of some sort. It's the hero's journey. I'm making this shit up off the top of my head. I read it in a fucking book. But then apply that traditional storytelling format to a wrestling story and learn how to identify those same plot points along the arc, so that in the middle of your story, this is answering your question now, how do you know when? Where's the balance? In the middle of your story, if all of a sudden your crowd is reacting like if they're at the end of the second act, like is where the tension should be the highest, right? Going into the final act, this is where your character is in the most trouble, or the most likely to succeed, or the most likely to fail, or the most likely to get killed, or most likely to lose the girl, whatever the fuck it is, right? It should be happening right around the end of the second act. But if you're towards the end of the first act and you're going, holy shit, people are really reacting to this, here's what you do. If you have the luxury of a freaking plan, is you sit down and go, okay, what did we have planned? Well, we were going to do this and this and this for the next 3 weeks, but man, fucking crowd is hot. How do we adjust? How do we not eliminate? Don't skip them. How do we adjust these next steps in our arc? These points along the way that are absolutely necessary to create the emotion, but perhaps we misjudged in a good way. Perhaps this talent is getting over faster or more than we thought. So rather than losing steam, let's tweak that. Is there a way to collapse it without losing the integrity and the continuity of the story? The answer is always going to be yes, because you're only limited by your own lack of imagination. So the answer is always going to be yes, but it's no different, Conrad, than building a house. When you build a house, you have the foundation, you have the plan. And if somewhere along the way you say, I really wanted 5 bedrooms instead of 4, but we've already poured the foundation, we've already framed the house, roof's on it, we haven't wired it yet or plumbed it. Shit. Wish we would have thought of this sooner. Your architect will say, no problem, provided you have the money, no problem. Let me go back to work. And he'll come back to you with a plan that shows you how to change the schedule of production, the additional materials you're going to need, and structurally what it's going to take to change your plan. A wrestling storyline is no different than a fucking blueprint for building a house. It's a plan. and plans can change, but the idea of having a plan makes it a lot easier than just, fuck, I'm not in the mood to do that. Let's not. I know we talked about doing that last week, but I want to do this today because I was just talking to the guy in the locker room and he's really excited about it and I don't want him to yell at me anymore. So let's do this instead. That's what you got. That's what you're working with. That's why people are stumbling. They're not getting over. You're not building your audience. There's no cohesion to stories. They're not really stories to begin with. They're not plot points. They're excuses for matches. Once you get to the point where you see the value of a creative plan and you're 100% confident in your ability to adjust it in an intelligent way as you go, in a tactical way as you go, once you get comfortable with that, then the balancing act becomes less of a guessing game.
I can't wait. I'm still yet to see Dynasty. I know as everybody's listening to this, they saw it last night, but there's rumor and innuendo, according to the Observer, that Jack Perry is finished with New Japan and he is returning to AEW. I think a lot of people expect that he'll show up tonight, or as folks are listening to this, last night at Dynasty. And you got to think he's going to be involved in the Young Bucks match. What would you do with Jack Perry? How would you reintroduce him into the fold here, given all the recent controversy and the reaction he got in Chicago? How would you present him?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. You know, I just don't know how much value Jack Perry really has. I know it's going to sound like a shot. He never impressed me a bit, like not even a little bit, before the whole CM Punk incident. Now, the only reason I think that there's any attention on him at all is because of the CM Punk backstage incident. And I think he'll be an interesting character for the next couple appearances, but I don't know how you build from that. And maybe there's a story there that I just can't see because I'm not interested in him, nor am I interested in the Young Bucks. Not as people, but as characters. I'm just not. Evidently, based on last week's ratings, neither is their own viewers.
Oh, come on.
Hey, is it a lie? Tell me if I'm lying. I'm waiting. No, you can't, because I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. They lost over 100,000 viewers in one segment. That's not good. It's not an indication that there's something going on there in a positive way. Quite the contrary. But because I'm not interested in them, I'm not seeing any value in them. I'm not seeing any value in their audience in them. It's hard for me to spend a lot of time thinking about them. But I think basically because this situation is born out of a negative CM Punk incident, we saw what happened, the backlash that happened as a result of showing that footage. We saw the ratings come down the very next week to 700 and some odd thousand viewers. You're trying to build on quicksand. I'll go back to the house. You're going to build a house, build it on a strong foundation. Don't build it on a quicksand or in a swamp. And because this Jack Perry's character and awareness of him right now is all the direct result of a negative, I'm not confident that you can build on that.
Well, I'm confident we're going to be talking about it, the good, the bad, and the ugly later this week on 83weeks.com. If you haven't already, go hit the subscribe button. Be sure to turn on the notifications bell. It's absolutely free, but Eric is going live each and every week, and it doesn't cost a penny. It's all happening at 83weeks.com. You don't want to miss it. So the way to do this is be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. And I also want to mention that we're taking a lot of questions over there. So if you've got a question about something we're talking about, drop it below the video, even this one. And we're going to start screen grabbing those and discussing those here on the program. By the way, I want to mention,
hey, Conrad, before we wrap it up here, this week on 83weeks.com, Bully Ray is going to be joining me.
Oh, wow.
Stay tuned. Watch out on social media. A fan on Twitter said, hey, you two should do a Wise Choices together on 83weeks.com. So Bully made a comment, I made a comment, and we're going to do it. And Chael Sonnen also going to be joining me, I think, this week on on 83weeks.com. We're going to talk wrestling promos and UFC and professional wrestling. So that'll be fun.
Chael Sonnen should have been a pro wrestler. In another life, he was. And by the way, in another life, you were saving money with me over at savewithconrad.com. In my real life, I'm helping people keep more of their own money and get out of debt faster. And just don't take my word for it. Go read some of my reviews at conradreviews.com. Check out this one from 2 days ago. Jason E. this past Friday says, this was one of the best decisions I've made in a long time. Not only was I able to save around $1,500 a month, I got to experience the best team in the business. Each interaction with Larry and the team was absolutely a great experience. I cannot thank them enough for all they've done for me and my family. Also, thanks to Francis for all the laughs and your hard work. If anyone is even considering a mortgage or looking to eliminate debt, this is the place to go. You will not be disappointed. That's a 5-star review from my man, Jason E. He's saving $1,500 a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. Guys, it's easy. If we can't save you some cash, we won't waste your time. What are you waiting for? Hurry right now. Savewithconrad.com. That's savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 32416. And we'll be back next week talking all things WCW Hall of Fame, a fun hypothetical. And we're going to be having a discussion on social media this week. Love to have your interaction there. It's at 83 weeks on Twitter, or X, I guess, as the kids are calling it these days. And we'll be talking about the hypothetical WCW Hall of Fame next week here on the show. And be sure to check it out at 83weeks.com. We'll see you guys later this week, sooner rather than later, right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.